Hello, welcome to the Fanfic Majesty. If you want more content, you can follow me on Patreon. I will be uploading more content on there that will be exclusive. The link is in the description. Please support me. 8SS Chapter 176 Illegal Zone Previous Chapter Next Chapter. Advertisement after that. When the news arrives, the matter in front of me is almost finished. Next, just wait for the Navy on the Chambord Islands to come and receive the group of gangs they captured. It's just that during the time waiting on this street, Hayden felt that he was going to be unable to withstand it. The big sisters around are so exciting. The big sisters on the streets on both sides were already very unrestrained. Now, because of the little spirit that they showed, their group of women seemed to have become bolder. The words that came out from the red lips could hardly be written by him. He knew that as long as they were written out, they would surely take away the harmony. Now, this hotel street has returned to its previous very attractive atmosphere, coupled with the older sister who is more aggressively offensive at this moment. Hayden couldn't hold it, and his dozen or so younger brothers could not hold it long ago. Then, Hayden had to close his eyes and listen, and forcibly shielded him from the temptation that was constantly coming to him in the world before him. He made a deliberate detour to the Chambord Islands and did not come to do such mundane things. A strong heart is worthy of strong strength. A strong heart is worthy of strong strength. I'm here to find someone. Hayden emphasized silently in his heart, reminding himself why he came here, and at the same time trying to clear the chaotic brain full of thoughts. But it's okay. Advertisement the big sister, who was very unrestrained on both sides, did not dare to approach Hayden directly. If they changed someone else, they might have come straight up, but Hayden's Navy uniform still played a deterrent effect on them. Then a period of time passed. The Navy of the Chambord Islands arrived. After receiving the call worm, although they were a little puzzled, they came quickly. After Hayden's Marines handed over the tied-up local gangsters to the Navy in Chambord, he was finally able to leave this Desire Abyss. At this time, he was afraid that if he stayed here again, he might be what he is today. One day just swayed directly. I didn't even think about it. After that, Hayden left the island directly with a dozen younger brothers behind him. The islands from number 70 to number 79 are all within Hotel Street. Those who have just entered Hotel Street have not met the type of hotel just now. Obviously, the island just now is an area where hotels are not serious. At this time, he could finally catch his breath when he came to Hayden on another small hotel island. Standing on the outskirts of Island 75, Hayden couldn't help unbuttoning his suit, releasing the heat that had accumulated on him. The map is on yours. Hayden tugged his shirt inside to fan the wind, and asked while looking at his Marines. He now wants to see where they are now, and where is the location of the soap bubble park. Here, sir. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. One of the Marines replied immediately, taking out the folded map from his clothes, and then stepped forward and handed it to Hayden. Yeah. Hayden nodded casually, and withdrew his gaze from the island that made him have lingering fear, and turned to the map he was holding. The map expands. The general distribution of the Chambordian Islands can be seen clearly in Hayden's eyes. His eyes condensed immediately, and he immediately found the location marked Soap Bubble Park. Hayden raised his head to look at the number of the island on which they are now stepping. After saying, number 75, he said to himself, then his eyes shifted to the position of no advertisement then. He knew what route they should take to get to the Soap Bubble Park, but his expression seemed to be suddenly silent. Gone. Then, he folded the map and signaled that the seaman who had given him the map put it away. Although he said that at the beginning, judging from the performance in the comics, the old man should not have any special reaction after seeing them in the Navy. No problem. If you want to go to the Soap Bubble Park, you have to go through the illegal zone. It seems that I have to stay on this shampoo ground for one night today. The voice fell. But everyone didn't think much about it, and they immediately started to check their weapons and equipment to make sure they were prepared according to the commander's orders. Hayden now hates trouble. And because of the different strengths of the enemies, Hayden estimated that if those guys angered him, at that time, the shot may be a big noise. It caused a chain reaction after the level of the riots, and eventually became out of control. Follow the preparations made by Lily. Hayden made the decision, and he said in a low voice to the younger brothers next to him. Hayden cursed secretly in his heart. Understand. As long as they are not well-known Navy masters, those lawless pirates will not care so much. Hayden didn't want to cause riots, although the laws of this world have been displayed for people like pirates. A dozen seamen immediately replied loudly. Advertisement. On this map, no matter what route they choose to get to Soap Bubble Park, they will definitely pass through the illegal zone on the island. Hayden subconsciously looked at the time on his arm, indicating that it was now 2:47. Trouble, he couldn't help but whispered. Of course, Hayden is not one of the sheep, but those predators will treat him as a sheep. If you change places, ordinary pirates will usually run away when they meet their navy. The reason for worrying about Raleigh was only Hayden's nonsense. The guy who had troubled them before, although they looked very bluffing, was still of the kind of little trouble. If you enter the lawless zone later, the pirates inside are not of the kind of little trouble. But in that place, the pirates might even come directly in front of you and block your navy's path. Just as they are called lawful zones, there are many dark things in these places that completely ignore the existence of the world's laws. But, headache, Hayden couldn't help muttering in a low voice. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Chinese MTL fan fiction, second element novel can be read at hotmtl novel for free. But in those places, there is no legal zone as it is said in the literal sense. The real reason is still mainly illegal areas. However, he knew that when passing by these places, it was estimated that there was a 90% chance of causing riots. At this time, let alone whether you can find the person in the soap bubble park, even if you find it, I don't know how much time it will take. Right now. The person on this island who can directly cut him into a stupid man, Pluto Raleigh, this guy is not his main reason for worry. Because, although everyone didn't understand how the chief in front of him suddenly felt serious. The navy of their dozens of people walking in the illegal zone is like a flock of dozens of sheep slowly walking into the predator's territory. Chapter 177 Dead Town Previous Chapter Next Chapter Advertisement. I originally planned to do it in a day, and then embarked on a voyage to Amazon Lily. But as time passed a little bit, although there is only a very small possibility left at the present time, Hayden still holds a faint hope that he will find it once he goes, and then it will be done in less than 2 hours. Hayden thought about speeding up his journey. He began to force himself to ignore all the interesting things on both sides of the street, whether it was the food he had never seen before, or the young lady who made him unable to move. A group of people crossed Island 75, crossed Island 76, crossed Island 77. Then, with a group of more than a dozen seamen behind him, Hayden finally arrived at Island 20, the edge of the illegal zone. Standing on the end of the bridge connecting the number 20 lawless zone, Hayden stopped here, looking at the connecting bridge in front of him that could no longer be called a bridge. This is a huge masonry bridge. It was covered with green moss, and the bridge was broken everywhere. A brick was missing here, and a big hole appeared there. The most important thing is that the bridge was directly broken by something in the middle, making it impossible for ordinary people to go to the opposite island through the bridge. Hayden stared at the number 20 island across the bridge. The small island known as the illegal zone is not too scary in the literal sense. Except that there are almost no people on the small island in front, and the buildings on the island are a bit dilapidated. It basically looks like an ordinary and peaceful small town. However, since it is called a lawless zone, there is a reason why it is called this name. Advertisement. Hayden did not relax. Rather, it makes no difference whether he is lax or not. This little scene does not make him too nervous. It's the situation of the small group of seamen he brought. Although he probably has an understanding of their strength, he doesn't know what unexpected situation will happen after entering the depths of the lawless zone. Let's go. Hayden looked at the dilapidated bridge ahead, gestured to the seaman behind him, and then he was the first to walk up. The rupture of the bridge could not stop them from marching. In less than a few minutes, all the group of people passed the bridge and came to the illegal zone numbered 20. In the Chambord Islands, each island is basically equal to a world. The hotel street behind you is a more lively and noisy place, and now you are stepping on the number 20 island. Is it calmer here? After arriving on the island, Hayden did not stop, and continued to move forward. The seamen behind him all took up their weapons, looking on guard against possible threats from anywhere around them. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. There is no shelter from the huge number of buildings on other small islands. The huge roots of the Yakuman mangroves are more conspicuous on this deserted island, protruding the huge round roots. Although there are also buildings here. But when Hayden approached a little bit, he noticed that these dilapidated buildings were covered with green moss on the surface, almost blending with the special environment of the Chambord Islands. It's calmer around here. Hayden now feels that it is better to use the word, dead silence, to describe it. The appearance of this illegal zone was completely different from what he had imagined. Advertisement. He originally thought it would be like the kind in the movie, looking very wasteland, with strangely dressed guys of various races coming and going, and there are various dangerous goods on the street. However, this reality is really boring, of course. The island in this illegal zone is not really without people. In Hayden's perception of Reiki, he perceives that there are a certain number of guys around him, hiding in various places invisible, not knowing whether they are in a nest or doing something. Since these guys didn't dare to show it, then in Hayden's mind, it was basically equivalent to that these guys didn't exist. However, this is also just right. Without the kind of guy whose brain circuit is different from other people's jumps out, he can just walk right like this without worry, and walk all the way to the soap bubble park. Watch your surroundings. Be vigilant. Hayden walked inadvertently to the front, motioning to the group of boys behind him with his mouth. Then, the Marines behind him did not respond. They used their actions to express their understanding. They are not ordinary seamen, and they still have a little presence in the perception of potential dangers in the surrounding environment. I can't say how specific it is, but it is enough to let them know that in the quiet surroundings, it is not as calm as the surface. At the same time, the lawbreakers hiding around, all of them had their weapons in their hands long ago. As early as when Hayden and his navy set foot on this small island, they had been hiding by the side to observe the group of navy. On this Chambordian Islands, the current distribution of power is as early as before. The navy's territory is between the 60th and the 70th, because the Chambordian Islands are not well mastered, so they let the formation of illegal zones, and at the same time, do not enter into illegal zones. Those pirates who came to the Chambord Islands are still other criminals, and they will not provoke the navy on the island at will. Advertisement. At some point, the two parties reached such an unspoken agreement. And now, this group of more than a dozen navies is led by officers wearing naval justice coats, and these navies enter their territory, leasily, like this, at this time. Hayden noticed that on the door of a dilapidated building on the side, the sign with a rusty spear pierced a navy wearing a navy coat, and it was fixed on the door. Looking at the erosion of the corpse's appearance, this happened a long time ago. Obviously, the navy is not welcome in this place. The lawbreakers hiding in the sidelines observed Hayden and his navy for a while, but they didn't seem to have observed any information. On the contrary, they judged from the dozens of Marine soldiers, their footsteps, the posture of holding guns, the feeling in their eyes, the temperament of their bodies, etc., that these guys were not worrying. However, the naval officer in front of the dozen of them couldn't understand the details of this guy. The two swords on his back show that this guy is a swordsman of secondhand, but this guy seems to have the sharp eyes of no swordsman. Give them the feeling of these people. How can I say it? It feels like an ordinary person's feeling. Something is wrong. The lawbreakers hiding on the side all planned to observe for a few minutes. Then, in their sight, a small, weak figure, the owner of that figure, as if his head lacked a root, rushed directly towards the group of navy. Damn it. Be preempted by that kid. Chapter 178. Lilu. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. Step on. In the silent environment, a rush of footsteps suddenly sounded. The sound of footsteps was amplified several times in this environment, and it was naturally heard clearly in the ears of Hayden and his group, without any omission. Who? The seaman behind Hayden shouted in unison with the muzzle of the black hole's muzzle in the direction of the sound. Suddenly, a dozen pairs of eyes, including Hayden, looked at the people together. It was a little girl who suddenly came. He is about 1.5 meters tall and has a weak body. The only thin skirt on her body was stained, and the corners of the skirt were rotten and scattered like strips of mopping cloth. There was a shy smile on her dirty face, but she didn't seem to be bothered by what happened to her. Big Brother Navy, do you need a guide to come here? The little girl named Lilu timidly asked the Navy brothers in front of her. Lilu, is a living map in this area of the Chambord Islands. You can ask me about who you want to find, where to find, and what to find. When she talked about something she was familiar with, the look cautiously disappeared, and a proud smile appeared on her face. And Hayden's group, who contrasted sharply with the little girl's appearance. Wearing a clean and tidy uniform, everyone's temperament is full of strong self-confidence. Advertisement. They and this little girl who is struggling to survive in this illegal zone are people of two worlds. All the Marines immediately thought of this. At the same time, for the little girl who could understand the situation at a glance, the sympathy in their hearts began to overflow involuntarily. What a poor child. Little cute, do you live alone on this island? Sir, let's take this little girl together. The seaman under Hayden suddenly yelled, and the expressions on everyone's face were moved to tears by the stories that they had made up by their own brains. Take your sister, Hayden shouted, and directly hit the seaman's head with a mace. Sir. This mace also frightened the seamen who were overflowing with sympathy nearby, watching their noses, heads to the ground, and muttering weakly in their mouths. At this time, Hayden then carefully looked at the kid who suddenly ran in front of them. He couldn't help but frowned, thinking in his heart. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Although this kid looks miserable, like the kind of kid who lives alone in such a dangerous zone. But he didn't believe that this weak little girl would live on the Chambordian Islands, an island where pirates flow densely, for so long without incident. From this body, I haven't taken a shower for a week or two. The clothes on my body seem to have been worn for at least a few months and have not been changed. There is also a sign made by the kid himself, live map of the Chambord Islands. Although Hayden could not guess how long the kid had lived on this island, judging from these 3 points, he would have been at least 3 months or more instead of just coming here for 2 or 3 days. Advertisement. It seems that it is a troublesome visit. Hayden quickly had a general judgment of the situation in his mind, but he decided to follow the kid's routine. Although this little devil had absolutely no good intentions, but let him kill the little girl directly like this, to be honest, he couldn't do it. Boy. Hayden looked at the girl, squatted down towards her. His sight was level with that of the little girl. What? The little girl named Lilu looked at the Navy approaching her without hesitation, but she herself was a little at a loss and a little scared. When she did this in the past, the other people she met either treated her very carefully or treated her very rudely. Anyway, it won't be like this Navy, as if he was not feeling pitiful for himself, as if she was just an ordinary little girl. Is it true that you said you are a living map of this island? If I want to find someone, can you find someone for me? Hayden continued to ask, staring at the dazed kid in front of him. Lilu's reaction was slow for a second before reacting. Yes, that's right. Lilu, is definitely not a lie. I need to find someone, something, and somewhere. Just come to me. Lilu, you can do it in 1 step. She would pat her chest, and once again proudly emphasized her slogan. At this point, she suddenly stopped. The shoulders began to twist gradually, and the curvature of the mouth became exaggerated. That is, this service needs so little, you know. In Hayden's eyes, the little girl in front of him seemed to put on an air of profiteer in an instant. Looking at this kid, Hayden couldn't help being silent for a second. Then, just when he wanted to say, if his business can be done, money will not be a problem. As a result, the seamen behind him, who had been watching them, paid attention to the little girl's meaning, and they immediately shouted. I'm coming, sir, I have it, advertisement. The Marines suddenly squeezed to Hayden and the little girl. All of them looked like they were driving themselves to be pigs for others. Hayden couldn't help but put his hand on his face. He really didn't even look at this group of nerve-wracking guys. After a while, be quiet. Hayden brought a hint of spiritual pressure to his shout, and then quieted the group of noisy guys in his ears. Then, he continued his deal with this kid. If you can lead me to the person I'm looking for, the money issue won't be a problem. Hayden said indifferently, and to show his confidence in saying this, he exposed a corner of berry in his pocket. Although I still don't understand what this kid is trying to do, it's okay to have a local lead and lead the way. Wow. Lilu's attention at this time was all attracted by the pile of Bailey that the Navy in front of her had shown her. She only saw a corner of Bailey, but she also saw that Bailey seemed to have many zeros written on it. Okay. Okay. The deal is concluded, you must never regret it. Recovering Lilu, she immediately shook the large hand of the Navy in front of her with both hands and shook her hands abruptly, indicating that the deal between them had been confirmed and no one could go back. With so many pieces of Bailey, as long as one can be rewarded to her, then he can change into new clothes. Lilu thought beautifully in her heart. Holding the Navy's hands as if she had forgotten that she was still holding the Navy, she never let go, and a smile appeared on her face. Ah! Hayden looked at the mentally active kid in front of him with a chuckle, without saying anything. Chapter 179 Lead the Way. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. At the same time, just near the area where Hayden and his party were standing, where they were out of sight, the criminals on this small island were hiding quietly around. As for this group of guys called outlaws, unified by different forces, why have they not appeared in front of the Navy since this group of navies set foot on the island until now? Moreover, in the underground world where the Navy head is here, there is a bounty for each head, and the number of bounty is also high. Why haven't they directly shot it? One of them, he looked at Hayden and his party in the clearing ahead, but his eyes were mainly focused on the little girl who ran in front of the Navy. The thoughts in his mind began to lively. Aren't we going? His eyes were always fixed on the figure of the little girl outside, but he said to the companion next to him. Next to him, the other person who was also observing Hayden's group, he was silent for a second, and he didn't know what to do now. Maybe he didn't dare to do it. I don't know. He said, let's observe the situation of these guys again. The kid is indeed a bit troublesome. Lilu took the lead to find the Shanghai Navy line. They were a little jealous of this kid. However, under the lure of the Navy's head bounty, they still decided to observe the movements of these guys for a while to see if there were any opportunities they could miss. People of their gang have not left here for the time being. And the criminals hiding in other places around Hayden and his party, they also did not leave here. Perhaps it is at this moment that everyone who is hiding around has the same idea in their hearts. Back to Hayden. Little devil, it's okay for me to call your name directly? Hayden stood up and asked, looking down at the little devil. Advertisement. Lilu, who was looking up at Hayden, immediately replied after hearing this question. Well, no problem. Just call me Lilu. As she said, she tapped her head sharply, her expression respecting the Navy in front of her. Immediately afterwards, she seemed to have suddenly thought of something in her mind, and she continued to ask, Then Navy brother, what is your name? In Hayden's eyes, there was a somewhat puzzled expression on her dirty face, and her two big eyes flickered. Although the kid's face was black as if pulled out of a coal pile, judging from his facial features, he would definitely become a beautiful beauty when he grew up. Hayden closed his mouth and made an unexplained voice. Lori couldn't match his point. Hayden, this is my name. He told the kid in front of him. Oh. Lilu nodded. Then her little head tilted. Then. Master Hayden, what are you asking me to do? Find someone? Find a place? Or something? Lilu has entered her role, doing what a tour guide should do. Find a stylist named Tony. A kind person told me before that this person should be in the soap bubble park now. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Hayden said his own thing without hesitation. Tony. Hearing the name, Lilu repeated it subconsciously. She felt that the name seemed a bit familiar. After a while, she remembered the owner of the name. Oh, Lilu said suddenly, Tony, I know that guy. You know? Advertisement? I knew. Lilu heard that what the Navy wanted to ask for was such a simple thing. In her heart, because it was the order for the Navy to ask for her, the nervousness that she thought would be a little difficult, disappeared for a while. I know that guy Tony. Others don't know the specific location of that guy, but I know this living map. Lilu said this with a proud expression. Before Hayden could reply, she continued. Let's go now, I'll tell you as I walk. Then, her little hand grabbed Hayden's big hand and led him away. We still don't want to stay in this place for a safer place. After taking a step, she turned back to remind Hayden. After saying that, she looked vigilantly in the deserted environment around her. Hayden let her behave. Following the kid's footsteps, the sea soldiers behind him happily followed in a hurry. The officer said that he would not take it with him, but now he still follows along. The sea soldiers walking behind Hayden snickered and thought, Hayden had a team of more than a dozen people, and now a little girl was added, and the group began to move towards Tony's position. Some time passed. A group of people walked through these 24 illegal islands. However, within a dozen or so minutes of walking, the group of them hadn't even encountered the navy that had troubled them. Even if there were criminals on this island appearing in front of them, those guys did not come up directly, but stopped after seeing them and stood still and stared at them. Although this is exactly what Hayden thinks, but the actions and eyes of these guys kind of made him pay more attention. However, this small situation does not require him to think about it. Hayden looked at the kid leading the way, and then asked her, "That Tony, isn't he where no one knows? How can you kid know?" Advertisement, huh? Lord Hayden, are you calling me? Lilu, who led the way in front of him, turned back and looked back at Hayden. I said, Tony, the stylist, doesn't anyone know his exact location? Why would you kid know? Hayden repeated patiently. Hearing this question, her body kept walking forward, but her head turned back towards Lilu. Her footsteps suddenly stopped and she almost staggered and fell. But she immediately stabilized her figure. You don't want to find out who I am. I am the famous living map Lululu nearby. As if Hayden's question had invaded her, she suddenly retorted without thinking about it. Lululu? Hayden was attracted by the name, and spoke subconsciously while staring at the little demon in front of him. Looking at the Navy's eyes behind it was a bit unpleasant. Lilu immediately said, "Well, I prefer the word Lilu when others call me." Really? Hayden didn't ask any further. Immediately afterwards, Lilu thought of something, and immediately opened the topic. The person who told you Tony was in the soap bubble park before, that person is really a kind person. Although he doesn't know the specific location, but it's almost the same. Lord Hayden, you are really lucky. After that, Hayden chatted with the kid casually. The kid asked, and he answered. Randomly select a few strange things he has met in the sea to tell this little devil. Not only did this kid exclaim from time to time, but the seaman behind him also asked curiously after exclaiming from time to time. Chapter 180 Illegal Market Previous Chapter Next Chapter. Advertisement 341. Along the way, Hayden and his party had a cheerful atmosphere. They came from a relatively quiet island. This time they came to the island with a noisy atmosphere when they stepped on. This small island is completely different from the previous situation, and Hayden and his team immediately realized this. Although Hayden was walking behind Lilu at this moment, he did not see the expression of the kid in front of him. However, just from the little ghost's body that he wanted to jump up, he understood that the little ghost seemed to be driven by the lively atmosphere around him. Right now, the lively atmosphere on the island they landed on was like the kind of illegal market that Hayden had imagined in his mind. I can't see the end of the market at a glance, and my eyes are full of people. On both sides, there are many and very messy shops filled with goods, and there are merchants who just set up a wooden board on the sticky grass and start selling. Let's take a look. The specialty of the Sea King essence. The best iron-cutting sword, only for today, not waiting for it to expire. Future, destiny, fate for women. I have everything you want to know. Hayden and his navy followed the kid in front of the illegal market made up of criminals. It hasn't been long to go shopping. He feels that his eyes are about to see the flowers. The Shambordian Islands can be regarded as an end point in the first half of the Great Route. It is a gathering of goods brought by people who came here from different places. Anyway, all kinds of strange things that appear on the sea can be seen after a few steps. However, this unique bazaar is not a place where Hayden and the others can come casually as a navy. But the strange thing is that since they walked into the bazaar until now, no one has dared to come up to their troubles. Hayden observed the criminals around him, and he thought it was a bit weird in his heart. After these guys saw their navy, although the expression on their faces sank for a while, they were not ready to come up directly to them. Shouldn't? Hayden felt that his team of only a dozen seamen shouldn't scare the people on their island, and he didn't let Ryotsu go to frighten them. They definitely have something wrong with that. Advertisement. As Hayden thought, he continued to follow the kid in front of him. The seamen who followed him are now a bit indifferent, but the situation they are facing now is almost the same. Sir, let's go faster. Yes, sir. The Marines had become more vigilant about the current situation of being encircled. and the few Marines closest to the officer could not help but leaned behind Hayden and whispered. They thought that going through the illegal zone was just like before. Basically, no one appeared. They really didn't expect such an illegal market to exist. Moreover, they passed directly through the middle. Although I don't know why the countless hostile gazes around him still don't directly attack. But they believe that the problem of being attacked by the people around them is only a matter of time, and it is better to leave this place early before the ideas in their hearts are implemented. However, Lilu, the little girl in front of everyone, she seemed to have no sense of taking the Navy to lead the way to such a place with the largest number of criminals. It seems that there is no common sense that even a 3-year-old child knows in his mind. There is no friendly relationship between the Navy and the pirates. At this time, read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Leading the way, she stopped and looked back at Hayden. Master Hayden, this is the most famous market in our area. You can find what you want to buy and eat. You can find it here. She smiled and introduced Hayden to the market. Boy, continue to lead the way. Hayden ignored the kid introducing this criminal den to him. He directly held Lilu's head with his big hand, controlled her strength to turn her whole person forward, and then walked forward by himself. Wait. Lilu, who was taken aback by Hayden's movements, recovered and quickly followed. Master Hayden, don't you feel curious? How about it? Is it the first time to come to this kind of place? Lilu, who would walk side by side with Hayden, tilted her head and looked up at Hayden, as if she was asking for credit. Asked with a little excitement. Hey, kid. Hayden chuckled, looking at the road ahead, and said to the kid, if it weren't for things to be handled here, it would be troublesome, and I need you kid to lead the way. Hayden didn't finish half of his words. After listening to Lilu, he couldn't figure out what this meant, and how he felt that Lord Hayden beside him had been in a strange mood since he walked into this bazaar. Advertisement Lilu's face couldn't help showing a puzzled expression. Then, in front of Hayden's group, a strange fragrance suddenly floated in the air. Every one of them smelled the smell that made their throat feel dry. What? It's polar ice cream. Lilu, who was feeling a little sinking, immediately became excited, and shouted something that Hayden didn't know. Her eyes widened immediately, wanting to see where the fragrance was coming from in front of her as soon as possible. What? Hayden couldn't help but wonder. Afterwards, everyone saw a strangely smoky stall in front of the crowd where people gathered. Then, everyone walked to this smoky stall. However, it would be better to say that a dozen of Hayden and the others followed Lilu, who had been fascinated, to the stall. When the crowd gathered in front of this stall saw Hayden and his navy approaching, they remained silent as if they were friendly and gave them a place. This also happened to allow Hayden and his party to clearly see what the stall was doing. The polar ice unicorns are so delicious. The sign on the trolley reads such an exaggerated slogan. Behind the trolley is an uncle with a bald head who is using his dexterous hands to create ice creams that resemble strange animals. The feeling that this ice cream uploads to them is not only the chill, but also a very strong and unknown fragrance. Would you like a copy of our signature ice unicorn, little sister? The bald uncle leaned over to look at Lilu and asked, with a standard to a scary smile on his face. Gudong. Lilu looked at the world's most delicious food within her reach. She couldn't help swallowing her saliva, but failed to say the word, I want. What happened to her was already obvious. She had no money. So, she could only stare straight with her twinkling eyes. Sir, advertisement. Sir, at this time, the seamen behind Hayden saw the situation and their tone became very disgusting, and they shyly twisted their bodies and shouted to Hayden. They wanted to buy this ice cream for the poor little girl directly, but they only noticed that they didn't seem to have any money with them, otherwise they wouldn't be dragging this time. The meaning of the Marines was well conveyed to Hayden. At the same time, the pirates who had given way to them before, although they gave way, but they did not leave, all surrounded Hayden and their group, staring straight at their group. At this time, they watched this group of guys delaying their purchase of this thing. Although they didn't dare to touch Hayden and his party for the time being because they didn't dare to say, it was okay to talk about it. Hey, you poor ghosts can't afford it, don't get in the way. Quickly make way for Lao Su. The dead navy is really miserable. I don't even have money to buy an ice cream. Numerous pirates around began to ridicule all kinds of yin and yang, and within a few seconds, the surroundings began to quarrel. And Lilu seemed to be frightened by the movement. She didn't understand why these guys would react so much to the Navy. There seemed to be a gleam of tears in her eyes. Seeing that under this movement, the kid turned his head back and stared at him with indescribable eyes. Boom! Hayden glared at the place where the pirate was standing on the right, and a thick reiki instantly raged out of him. The power that is invisible to the naked eye directly fills the entire nearby world like a mad tornado. Just a glance. The pirates gathered in groups around them, as if deprived of their souls, turned into standing corpses, a dead silence. Then, Hayden turned to the ice cream owner in front of him and motioned, "Boss, give me a copy." When he finished, he took Barry out of his pocket to pay. Chapter 181 arrived. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. Gudong, Gudong. The sea soldiers who were not affected were once again frightened by the methods of the commander in front of them. They couldn't help but swallow tons of saliva as if they were drinking mineral water. Look left, look right, and finally can't help but look around. As they watched the surrounding pirates slowly, boom boom boom. Following their gaze, the pirates, standing like empty shells, followed one by one, like dominoes falling straight to the ground. As if their eyes had a special function, the pirates who surrounded them all fell on the grass without exception, losing consciousness. At this moment, only Hayden and his party plus the ice cream boss selling ice cream in front of them, and only a dozen of them were still standing and conscious people on the scene. Ah! Lord Navy. The bald boss who sells ice cream hesitantly looked at Hayden in front of him and said carefully, "The little one is just a good person who buys ice cream, Lord Navy." The bald boss with a very fierce appearance was unable to think normally in his mind at this time. Under the instinct of survival, he subconsciously said any words that would make him live. He looked ordinary in front of Hayden, who had an abyss hidden in his heart, completely transformed into a harmless and cute little sheep. The bald-headed boss looked at Bailey, who was handed out by the Lord Navy in front of him. He held the completed characteristic, Ice Unicorn, in both hands, and tremblingly handed it out of the cart, and handed it to the little ghost in front of the Lord Navy. "My lord. This is a gift for you, Lord Navy, no money." With a crying expression on his face, he didn't dare to pick Barry in Hayden's hand. Advertisement? Oh. That's good. Hayden was a little delighted, and Bailey, who held it, put it back in his pocket without even thinking about it. "Thank you, boss." He smiled at the good guy in front of him. Then, Hayden motioned to raise his head to look at the kid who was waiting for his permission. "Boy, take it quickly, we should go," his tone urged. "Okay. Thank you, sir." Lilu, with bright eyes and bowing eyes, heard Lord Hayden's permission, and immediately jumped up happily, then turned around and caught the large bowl of ice cream with both hands. She has only eaten this ice cream once since she was a child, and she has only eaten one bite. However, the taste of this ice cream has been hard for her to forget. She has no money. Every time the adult gave her only enough money to barely fill her stomach. There are no new clothes, no toys, let alone these delicacies that exist just for enjoyment. Now, this Lord Navy would be so good to her, she was happy from the bottom of her heart. Let the adult entertain them later. Lilu couldn't help taking a peek at the Lord Navy in front of him, and after licking a sip of the ice-cold ice cream, she thought to herself. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Just as Hayden and his party were about to leave the booth, Hayden, who had already turned his back to the trolley, suddenly stopped in his footsteps. He then turned his head and looked at the bald boss behind him without any emotion. "Boss, I advise you to do your business better in another place," Hayden said lightly without any fluctuations in his tone. But in the ears of the bald boss, he understood the true meaning of these words. "Understand, sir. I'll change places right away." He hurriedly touched his head and said with a smile. "Okay." Hayden nodded without answering, and directly led a group of people back to the journey to find Tony. Advertisement. 4:20 in the afternoon. Hayden and his party, who have not stopped after buying ice cream, have finally reached the end of this illegal zone. After walking through this island, the next island is the place where Soap Bubble Park. At this time, Lilu finally took care of the large bowl of ice cream in her arms. After eating, she couldn't help making a comfortable sound, and rubbed her slightly bulging belly. "Yeah, this ice cream tastes exactly as good as the taste in my heart." She was so comfortable that she closed her eyes and sighed, however. He couldn't help staring at the back of the kid leading the way, but Hayden felt a little strange in his heart. Why has it been so long? How could this weird little devil still make her move? Is this guy really, as she herself said, a living map of the Shambordian Islands? Is she really taking them to Tony's location now? Hayden doubted the kid's intentions in his heart, but now he wondered if he was thinking too much. Maybe this kid is exactly what she said herself, there is no other tricky. Okay. Hayden stared at the back of the kid in front of him, then thought about it again. How did this little devil, who had no ability to resist, survive for so long by himself in a place like this? Although this kid is just an ordinary human child, for those greedy pirates, seizing one and selling it is a kid's money. There shouldn't be too much reason for such things as money for those pirates. Sure enough, this kid still has a weirdness. Advertisement. Hayden squinted his eyes and looked at the kid in front of him, thinking something in his heart, no one knew. Now that this small island is closer to the location of the soap bubble park, the situation on the island is once again almost the same as the desolate scene at the beginning. The shadows of people are dwindling, and the existence of buildings is not only scarce, but also very dilapidated. Master Hayden, you made the movement just now, it's amazing. At this time, Lilu, who had been slow to react for a long time, suddenly thought of this matter, and immediately confirmed to Hayden. She had never seen anyone able to put a large group of people directly in without moving. Although Lord Hayden didn't say it clearly, she knew that the movement must be Lord Hayden. Hayden replied casually. He didn't know how to react to this kid who didn't understand what he was doing. That's all. In the chat between Lilu and Hayden, Lilu took them to a small island with the entrance hidden in a hidden place under the roots of the huge mangrove tree in Yarkman. The color of the gate is almost integrated with the green environment next to it. If you don't look carefully, you will never realize that there will be a gate in this place. Here is it. Lilu stood in front of the gate and told Hayden and the others behind him. After speaking, she was about to knock on the door, calling the people inside to open the door. Hayden stood at the door and didn't say anything. He subconsciously looked to the left and right of this place, and found nothing unusual. Does a famous stylist live in this hidden place? It seems to be a bit eligible. Sir, this place feels curious and wonderful. The stylist really lives in this kind of cool. The Marines looked at the magical gate that merged with the huge tree roots, and they couldn't help sighing. Subsequently, after Hayden heard Lilu pat the door vigorously, he withdrew his gaze from both sides and stared at the door that was about to open in front of him. Chapter 182 Underground Space opens previous chapter. Next chapter advertisement boom. A wave of shaking like the earth and the mountains suddenly appeared. Due to its own weight, the door made a dull sound when it was opened. A door more than 2 meters wide in front of me was slowly opened by the people inside. A crack gradually appeared in the huge root of Yakuman's mangrove. Hayden and others and Lilu were in front of the gate, quietly watching the people inside open the heavy gate. The door was opened to a small gap by the people inside, and there was no light coming out of the gap, and Hayden and the others could only see a dark scene. A guy with a muscular body that is not easy to mess with at first glance leaned out from the crack in the door. There is no expression on this man's face, and his eyes are hollow, as if nothing can cause him to fluctuate. He was 1 head taller than Hayden, and the muscles of his forearms were stronger than Hayden's thighs. Lilu. The expressionless guy who looked like a bodyguard looked at Lilu and nodded. Then in the eyes of Hayden and his group, they gave them a place to enter. It didn't seem to be surprised by the arrival of their navy. Okay. Lilu nodded towards this person and replied, with nothing more to say. In Hayden's eyes, this little devil came down a bit when he saw this man after he was still a little happy. Hayden didn't understand the situation between this kid and this guy who was obviously not an ordinary bodyguard. Advertisement however, these seem to be regardless of his business. As long as you find the Tony and settle the matter, you can go directly to see Hancock. Lilu walked in first. Hayden watched the kid go inside with his head dull. He subconsciously looked at the little brothers behind him, who gave him the same puzzled expression as him. Hayden and his little brothers were silent for a second. Afterwards, Hayden shrugged indifferently, and after signaling to the younger brothers behind him, he followed in and stepped into a very hidden place on this small island. Then, before the group of them could adjust to the suddenly dimmed environment, Hayden felt that they were walking underground. They're walking on a ladder that leads directly to the ground. What? Hayden frowned and began to think. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. The strength of the big man guarding at the door does not seem to be that of an ordinary person. And that Tony stylist, is he just a stylist who needs such a big scene? And this secret excavation into the underground place. Gazing at the back of the kid in front of him, Hayden felt as if he was in a big trouble. Together, these various details indicate that the owner of this place will definitely not be the kind of ordinary character. Trouble. Advertisement. After Hayden first met the kid, he knew immediately that something was wrong with the kid. However, he didn't expect that this little devil was wrong to the present level. The walls on both sides of the stairs were lit by faint candlelight, which connected to the deepest part of the ground. However, despite the orange light, Hayden did not feel the slightest sign of warmth. While continuing to follow the kid in front of him slowly, Hayden turned his head and looked at the Marines following him, using the dim light source to signal them with his eyes. Hayden didn't know if they saw his wink or understood the meaning of his signal. However, even if they didn't understand it, it didn't matter if they didn't see it. It was just a precaution for the next situation and let them be careful. In the unlikely event that something goes wrong, he is still confident that he can protect a dozen of them. However, the Marines who followed, because of the weird environment they are in now, they don't need to be reminded by the previous officer, they themselves have been extremely vigilant. Less than a while time passed. It seemed that there was still a long way to go down the stairs, and Hayden and the others had already walked it before they realized it. They will follow Lilu, who led the way to a circular space, not knowing how much distance from the surface of the circle. And because the island is basically built on the Yakuman mangrove, bubbles appear more frequently in the space deep into the roots of the huge tree than on the island. There is nothing in this circular space, and the interior is extremely empty. Any subtle voices can be heard clearly here. But what is strange is that the walls in this circular space appear as if they have been remnants of numerous attacks. Not only the surroundings of the circular space, but also the ceiling above them basically have the same traces. Sir, is the place where the stylist lives so scary? The Marines who stood in this place with Hayden looked around and saw that there was actually nothing, but it was as terrifying as a beast roaring in front of them. Advertisement. After observing the entire space, Hayden temporarily ignored the calls of the younger brothers behind him, because Lilu, who was standing in front, spoke. Master Hayden, I'm sorry I lied to you. This is not the place of the stylist. Lilu would lower his head and dare not look at Hayden, saying in a very sorry tone. The adult who raised me all the time taught me to show the warmest etiquette to the guests who come to our island, and to invite them home to be guests. Lilu slowly said the reason for doing this. That adult will be here soon, and then that adult will take Master Hayden to eat the best food on the island and play the most fun things on the island. Speaking of this, Lilu couldn't help showing a look of longing, and then she said anxiously, Lord Hayden, you will be very happy when you see that adult. I'm not sure I will be happy. After listening, Hayden shrugged his shoulders, but his face showed a certain expression. Hayden had no unexpected reaction to the kid bringing them here. He looked at Lilu and asked indifferently, Boy, how old are you? When hearing this seemingly irrelevant question, Lilu raised her head and looked towards Hayden. 10 years old. She spit out the answer in a daze. 10 years old? Hayden murmured while staring at Lilu, frowning. From the meaning of this little idiot just now, it seems to have been born in this illegal zone since a very young age. Hayden carefully analyzed the meaning of the kid's words in his heart. Then think of the most popular business in this illegal zone, that is, the business of human trafficking. And the person who taught her to bring outsiders home should be the kind of human trafficker. I don't know what I am fancying about this kid, so I decided to raise her until now, and then use it specifically to trick outsiders into this place, and then just grab it. Thinking of this, Hayden glanced at the remnants on the surrounding walls again, and it seemed that the guys who were deceived had struggled in this place. However, this place has always existed and worked well. I don't know how many silly piglets have been tricked into selling them. Chapter 183. The boss is dead, so what shall we do? Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. Sure enough, how can there be such a good thing? There is no such thing as trying to find a person who doesn't know the location, but as soon as he took a step,
Someone walked up to him and patted his chest to tell him the good thing about knowing that person's specific location. Hayden sighed leisurely. He had no idea about this kid. This kid seemed to be taught to be like this from birth. He didn't have his own judgment on this situation, but just obediently followed what others told her and did it honestly. Hayden was not angry, but a little lamented that time was wasted, and good things did not happen. Sir. The Marines, who couldn't help but gathered behind Hayden, in an environment where this slight voice could be clear. Of course they heard the little girl's words. At the same time, as long as you are not a fool, of course you will immediately understand the true meaning of the words. How could there be such a concealed and weird place to trick their navy into entertaining them? And the reason is simply because the adult in her mouth is very hospitable? The enemy is coming soon. In the hearts of the navy, including Hayden, everyone immediately realized the same thing. Hayden would no longer pay attention to the little ghosts in front of him, and immediately looked at the younger brothers behind him and reminded him. Be vigilant. Everyone looks in different directions and observes all directions in this space. Words fall. He pulled out the sleeve of Shirayuki on his back in advance, held the knife in one hand, and watched the surrounding environment together with his men. Be alert to the environment where there is only the only entrance and exit that they have just entered this place. Above, underground, a circle of walls around. That so-called adult will come out from that place. Advertisement. The calm Hayden immediately sensed the nearby Ryotsu carefully, and then, crisp footsteps came from the stairway where they had just descended. He immediately perceives that the ray pressure of the arriving person does not seem to be special, just like those pirates who are offering a reward of 40 to 50 million. What? It's so mysterious, but only this strength. Hayden's interest in this mysterious atmosphere disappeared. Everyone was looking at the stairs where the sound came from, and Lilu ran over after hearing this. Hayden and the others didn't stop her either. If it was a person or something, she would immediately see her true colors. Huh. Then, the master of the footsteps entered the sight of Hayden. A normal man with a finely tailored white suit, oily hair and a pair of gold-rimmed round glasses on his face appeared in front of everyone. This person feels like Hayden is the kind of guy in the role of a lawyer. Master Richard, this elder brother is very nice to me, sir, you must treat them well. Lilu rushed up and hugged the man's thigh and said. Good. The man named Richard smiled and rubbed Lilu's head and said, Lilu did a great job this time, and I will surprise you later. His eyes revealed can't stop smiling. In the eyes of Hayden and others at this moment, the scene in their eyes is like a situation where the younger sister is acting like a baby to his brother. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. However, although Hayden didn't know whether Lilu knew this, in his feelings, the sense of violation was almost overflowing. And Richard didn't expect that this kid could bring him the Navy. The Navy has a tempting bounty in their underground market. At this time, Richard looked up at the group of people Lilu had brought him, and looked at the dozen or so people in front of the Navy. The smile in his eyes at this moment can hardly be described in a normal category, the smile on his face. He became more arrogant and didn't care about being noticed by the Navy before him. This is so special, the traffickers are really scum in the world. After staring at the man named Richard, Hayden immediately came to a conclusion. Suddenly, advertisement. The grinning Richard directly tore through the surface mask. Boy, get out of Lao Su quickly, don't delay Lao Su making money. As he said, his right hand grabbed Lilu's head and lifted it up, and then moved to the side. Flicked the direction. What? Lilu, who hit the ground, immediately let out a cry of pain, and then her body curled up on the ground in pain. You bastard! Are you looking for death, Lilu? Although the Marines understood that they were deceived by Lilu to this place, shouldn't that guy be Lilu's companion? How did you treat Lilu's little girl like this? The Marines got angry right away. Are you a big man ready to treat a 10-year-old girl like this? Hayden stared at Lilu, who was lying on the ground, his brows frowned slightly without showing. When Richard saw these navies react like this, he felt even more amused. Hey, don't you guys have not recognized the situation now? He said loudly, and he couldn't help but arched and laughed. His smile was magnified to a very harsh degree in this empty environment. You stupid Navy, don't you understand that you are being sold by this kid now? This kid is my bait specially for fishing, he continued. Having said this, His face was involuntarily showing an expression of admiration, and he didn't worry about the Navy in front of him launching a sudden attack on him, reveling in his own fantasy. After a while, he turned back to look at Shang Hayden, clapping his hands with his hands, as if he was preparing to do something, and said, "Okay, it's time to." However, he was only halfway through, Fourth Broken Road by Lay. Looking at the noisy clown in front of him, Hayden said the ghostly way silently. Point the index finger of the left hand at the position of the heart of the clown in front of him at the moment. Immediately afterwards, advertisement, a slender pillar of lightning that appeared like real thunder and lightning instantly penetrated this person's chest and hit the stairs behind him. The dazzling lightning exploded suddenly in this confined environment, radiating a blazing light and a loud and deafening noise. As a result, everyone present subconsciously blocked their eyes with their arms, and did not dare to look directly at the light, and at the same time passively endured the sound of explosion in their ears. After a while, the visual sensation of the crowd that seemed like the sky and the earth gradually faded. They put down their hands in front of them and looked curiously at the place where the commander had just hit. I saw that the guy who was clamoring in front of them just now fell to the ground without any response, and the stairs behind him directly exploded a big hole. "Hey, why are you stunned? Go and see how that kid is doing." After doing a normal thing, Hayden shouted at the stunned little brothers. At the same time, ignore the rare system points that this guy only has this strength. Oh, good sir. The stunned Marines heard the commander's command, and kept stunned, hurried to Lilu's side to check her condition. At this time, the wall of this circular space was triggered by something and slowly rose. In Hayden's eyes, 5 passages appeared on the surrounding walls, and the sound of footsteps shaking the ground beneath his feet came from all of the 5 passages. 5 big men with a height of 6 meters slowly appeared on the stage. However, when the 5 of them saw the corpse lying in the direction of the stairs at first sight, the 5 of them were immediately dumbfounded. "The boss is dead, what shall we do?" The 5 exchanged their eyes, and the same question popped up in their hearts. Chapter 184 Draconin debut previous chapter next chapter. Advertisement at this moment. In this circular space deep underground, 5 passages that do not know where they lead were revealed on the surrounding walls, and 5 men who were considered to be oversized came out of the passage. The height is estimated to be more than 6 meters. The height of one floor is about 3 meters, and 6 meters is the height of 2 floors. In order to support the strong body that naturally matches the height, these 5 big men were like 5 huge door panels, which trapped Hayden and his party. The Marines who were gathering around Lilu were dumbfounded when they saw this scene. However, this sudden appearance of 5 big men with terrifying momentum, they are equally dumbfounded. "Boss!" The 5 big men who came out yelled subconsciously, like thunder exploded in this confined environment. They immediately noticed Richard lying on the ground in their sight. This person is their 5 common bosses, and the 5 of them came out to cooperate with the boss to subdue the slaves brought this time. But the 5 of them never thought, why would he just die as soon as he came out of the boss? The hollow in the chest can directly see the inside of the boss's body, and the pupils that kept the eyes open before death have long lost their luster. Obviously, their boss will not just be hit on the ground, but has lost his life. The 5 big guys realized this in an instant, and suddenly looked at the guy who was brought in this time, but then they saw the unexpected guy Hayden as the Navy. "Did the Navy kill our boss?" One of the big guys seemed to hurriedly ask Hayden in the justice coat. The strange thing is that in Hayden's feelings, the meaning of these words is not like anger over the death of their boss, but an inexplicable fear. He felt a little strange. Advertisement. "That's your boss, I did it." Hayden shrugged without thinking and replied directly. When the 5 big guys heard this answer, they responded with silence. Although I don't know what happened here before they came out, however, they now know their future. Everyone who is here now will be killed. You are finished, you are completely finished, even your status as the Navy will not save you. The 5 big guys didn't want to attack Hayden. The 5 of them spoke very tacitly. They, with a huge body of 6 meters on one side, seemed to suddenly weaken their bones and directly slumped on the ground. It became like 5 helpless little girls at this moment. "We are going to be over, we are going to be over." They seemed to lose their souls in an instant, and continued to mutter to themselves. Hayden was a little confused about this. What is the situation now? Why do these guys look like a dead girl after seeing the person he killed? Hayden subconsciously looked at the little brothers who were helping Lilu's little devil up. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. At this time, after the Marines watched the movements of these big men sluggishly, they also couldn't help looking at the officer next to them. I don't understand. After exchanging his thoughts with the boys, Hayden still did not get the answer. However, since these guys are the subordinates of the trafficker, it means that these 5 guys are also accomplices, so just destroy this place and leave. Hayden thought to himself after seeing the situation of the 5 big men. Although it is a bit inconsistent with Hayden's principles to take action against these 5 people who are currently unprepared, but there is no need for principles for human traffickers, just kill them directly. And the question of how to deal with Lilu, this little devil. Advertisement. Even though she didn't mean to do these things, she still did these things on her own. I don't know how many guys were tricked here. Wait. Looking at the little devil who is now being helped by the boys to keep silent, Hayden suddenly remembered that this little devil seemed to have been abducted in these illegal areas, and the only ones who can come to these illegal areas are these pirates, kind of criminals. Hayden couldn't think of a way to deal with it for a moment, though. Hayden slowly pulled out Shirayuki's sleeve from the scabbard behind him, and the rubbing sound was magnified several times in the confined space, rendering a touch of horror. Kill these 5 guys first, destroy this place and go out and think about it. Thinking about it this way, Hayden, who held a sword in his hand, was ready to slash the slash and directly eliminate the guy in front of him. Suddenly, the strange thing is that a sound like the kind of chain collision came into this space from the position of the stairs, and there was also a noisy sound of people talking. How dare that idiot delay my time? It seems that guy doesn't want to live anymore. This time just replace this idiot and find another one to replace this idiot, father. So too, there was a voice of conversation. The tone of this conversation made Hayden's Marines feel an inexplicable terror. But in the ears of the 5 big guys who had lost the ability to think, they felt real fear. They were on the verge of collapse, and they collapsed completely. It's over. They're here. What? Advertisement. Hayden couldn't help frowning. What are these guys doing? His ray pressure perception immediately scanned up. 1, 2, 3. A total of 5 Ryotsu and one that is very unlike human Ryotsu. At this time, the sound of chains, the chuckle of high-heeled shoes, and the sound of conversation are getting closer and clearer. At the same time, the tone of the conversation sound made Hayden feel more and more disgusting, and the idea came out with the impulse to kill the voice owner. It even seemed that the air here was contaminated by the breath coming in from the stairs. What kind of guy is this guy? How can he give this feeling? Hayden stared at the stairs in front of him that was blown into a big hole by his attack, and couldn't help but feel puzzled. Immediately, his doubts were answered. Amidst the background sound of the chain collision, the perceiving visitor appeared from the position of the stairs. The Dragon Man appeared on the stage. There was a bubble on his head, and he was wearing clothes with a swimming ring. There is no need for Hayden and his dozen or so seamen to think about it. They immediately realized that the unexpected person was the Dragonite, and not just one, but 2 Dragonites. Each of them held a slave imprisoned in iron chains, followed by a strange guy dressed in a black suit, and a pet dog with a bubble helmet at their feet. I'm Sao. Hayden spit out a swear word between his clenched teeth. Dragon. He stared at the 2 dragons headed by the stairs. His emotions were a little unsure how to react. Chapter 185. Kill Me All the Navy. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. However, the 2 heavenly dragons who appeared on the stairs did not notice the presence of Hayden and others in the field. That idiot, the stairs have been blown up. How can I get down like this? The female Tinlongren named Shalulia Palace looked at the gap below her eyes, and she immediately began to curse. The piercing voice immediately sounded and reached where Hayden and the others were now. Another male Dragonite named Rosevard Saint. His mood was also a bit ruined by the big pit in front of him. It seems that this time I really have to kill that idiot, he said in a deep voice. There is no mercy in the words, but purely ruthless and cruel. At this time, Hayden's eyes were not on these 2 dragons, but on the guy dressed in a black suit behind him. Hayden's sights collided with that guy. He didn't notice any emotions from the guy's eyes. He didn't feel surprised about the existence of their navy now, and he didn't feel a little concerned about it. The navy didn't seem to exist in his eyes. This guy is the bodyguard of the Tianlong people. Hayden thought to himself that the strength of this guy is a bit weird. Immediately afterwards. Advertisement. The Tianlongren named Shalulia Palace looked at the gap in front of him and the flat ground below, and ordered the slave in her hand, an adult male slave with a sturdy body of 4 meters in height, to step on the stairs. While speaking, the iron chain in his hand pulled fiercely, although her strength is obviously not enough to pull an adult man up to 4 meters tall. But the adult man, who was restrained by the special collar, followed this weak force and was directly pulled over by her master, and his body then rolled down the stairs. "And you rubbish, get me down and use it as a staircase," Shalulia Palace continued to order towards another slave. Another slave hurriedly rolled down the stairs, forming a staircase with the slave who fell first just enough for their master to go down. "Wow!" The pet dog with the bubble hat first called and stepped on the slave's body and ran down. Then there is Saint Rost, and then the palace of Charulia. The heels of the high-heeled shoes worn by Shalulia Palace's feet immediately pierced into the slave's body, and the uncomfortable touch from her feet immediately made her angry. "Why are you stupid bodies so hard?" In the end, the bodyguard of the Tianlongren, he silently followed behind without any response. Then, Hayden and the others stood on the same plane as the Tianlongren, standing face to face. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. At this time, the Tianlongren finally discovered the existence of these navies, and at the same time noticed a corpse lying on the ground in front of them. "Navy?" Rosevard Saint looked at Hayden wearing a navy justice coat and couldn't help saying to himself. "Huh?" Shalulia Palace frowned as she looked at the idiot who had fallen to the ground and was killed. As for the Marines standing next to Hayden, they were completely stunned when they watched the Tianlongren not far away. What is Tianlongren? Advertisement. The Tianlong people are the descendants of the 20 kings who established the world government 800 years ago. They call themselves descendants of the Creator. They are the world's highest nobles living in the holy land of Mary Joya and enjoy all the privileges in the world. More importantly, once the Tianlong people are offended, then the generals of the Navy headquarters under them must come to safeguard them. In other words, the Tianlong people are basically equal to the masters of this world, and the guys who anger them will directly attract the destructive blows of the Navy general. As long as it is not a character like the 4 emperors, life is basically over. "Sir. What should we do now, sir? Should we kneel down?" "Sir. Sir." The seamen who recovered their senses immediately looked at Hayden in front of them, waiting for the commander in front of them to give them instructions on what to do now. It's just that Hayden didn't respond, because he himself didn't know what reaction he should use to face the Dragonite in front of him. The 2 heavenly dragons glanced at the corpse on the ground and then stopped paying attention to them. It was like an ant died. However, this is also their ant. That guy dares to arrogate their ant. "Navy, did you kill this maggot lying on the ground?" Shalulia asked in a deep voice toward Hayden, who was wearing the justice coat, while her eyes were focused on Hayden's face. "Yeah." Hayden replied in a low voice, directly acknowledging this fact. He didn't know what the answer would lead to. The female Tianlongren named Zillaria Palace heard this answer, and she did not overreact. Her eyes wandered back and forth on Hayden's face at this moment, and Hayden's handsome face made her dispel her previous thoughts. There was silence in the field at this moment. Although there were more than a dozen people, no one was talking at the moment. After Chalulia Palace pondered for a moment, "Since your navy has killed this idiot, you will do his job from now on," she said. She faintly determined the fate of Hayden as a navy in the future, and she spoke with an air like she didn't think the navy in front of her would dare to refuse her. Advertisement, "I reject." Hayden didn't even think about it, didn't hesitate, and answered straightforwardly. What? The exclamation sounds overlapped, not only from Charulia Palace, but also from the sea soldiers beside Hayden. Although Hayden's Marines maintained the same idea as Hayden about the dragons, they certainly didn't want the chief to be arranged by these dragons to do their dirty things. However, they are Tianlong people. "Navy, are you kidding?" The Shalulia Palace, who restrained her a little because of Hayden's face, couldn't believe that the Navy would directly refuse her Denon orders. "No," Hayden replied immediately this time. As soon as she reached the Chalulia Palace, she thought she had hallucinations. the Navy really dared to treat her Draco like this. At this moment, Hayden's face was not enough to support Charulia Palace, where the anger was rising at the moment. "My father, kill all these navies for me," she yelled abruptly, without any hesitation because of Hayden's naval status. "It's up to you." Roswald Saint, her father, who was standing next to her, waved his hands casually. Then waved his hand to signal the bodyguard behind him to clear the Navy in front of him. "Originally, today I came to this idiot to get some fun things, but the idiot died." Saint Roswald, whose mood suddenly deteriorated, followed his daughter's wishes, just to deal with the Navy, and at the same time ease his mood. Chapter 186 Tinlongren, Die for the Lord, previous chapter. Next chapter advertisement. It's 5 and 1. At this moment, Hayden glanced at the watch on his left hand subconsciously. The words spoken at random by the two Tinlongren in front of him determined his next actions. Only from the tone of the Tinlongren speaking before him, Hayden understood that it seemed that today was about to end in a terrible ending. From the time he first came into this world, he had thought in his heart how he would react when he actually saw the Tinlongren, and now, it was basically the same as what he had imagined in his heart. Kill all the people of the Tianlong people directly. Since you Tianlong people want to kill my navy, then I have no reason to let you kill me honestly. As for the subsequent impact, etc., it is no longer what Hayden is thinking about now. The Tianlong people ordered the guards behind to get rid of these naval orders, causing an anxious and panicked mood to hit the hearts of their subordinates. "Sir, what should I do now?" "That's right, sir. These two heavenly dragons are going to kill us. Should we fight back? Or?" The seaman beside Hayden looked very disturbed and anxious now. Suddenly, a tense breath filled this relatively confined space. As they have been taught the knowledge of the Tianlong people since childhood, in this decadent world, they have long been imprisoned by the knowledge that has been instilled into their brains. Even if the Tianlong people are planning to let them die directly, the thoughts in their hearts are still a bit hesitant, and they don't know what to do. Be quiet, as their chief, as their backbone at the moment, Hayden did not turn around to look at them, and murmured for them to calm down. Advertisement, because now there is one last chance to avoid what will happen. It was the guard behind the Tinlongren who had to execute the order to kill them. If the guards on the side of the dragon people looked at them as the Navy, and would find a way to dispel the order from the dragon people to him, then there is no need to make the situation too ugly. However, the guard behind the Tinlongren slowly walked out from behind the Tinlongren and stood in front of the Tinlongren. "Okay, master," he said lightly. There was no emotion in the tone, no hesitation, because they were the Navy. They were originally from their camp, like a ruthless machine. In this space where even the slightest sound would be amplified, the guard's answer was clearly heard by everyone on Hayden's side. There is no room for recovery. The same thought appeared in everyone's hearts. Obviously, in the current situation, it is not possible to break away from it with just a few words. In the minds of the Marines, they knew very well what kind of miserable end the attack on a Tinlongren would have. Naturally, not to mention, killing a Tinlongren, or what the fate of two Tinlongren will be. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Now, no matter what choice they make, they will die here, on the Chambord Islands. According to the wishes of the Tianlong people, they would die if they were killed by this guard or the like. If the Chief Hayden in front of him can kill this guard and protect their lives, there will be no chance of redemption in the face of the Tinlongren. The generals of the Navy headquarters who will be called by them, the strength of the generals, cannot be carried by their small navy. And Chief Hayden, the most powerful of them, was just a major general. After allowing the Tianlong people to survive and go out, their group also died. Kill the Tianlong people, they are also dead. Advertisement. An unsolvable situation lay before Hayden and others. The chaotic seamen in their minds now looked at the ugly faces of the two celestials in front of them that were too ugly to look directly at. They were heartbroken and made the most daring decision in their lives in their minds to follow Chief Hayden together. But, for Hayden, who is now the only capable, he will only let this happen to him when there is no solution. As long as all 5 members of the Tinlongren group are killed, there will naturally be no witnesses. Although the Tinlongren might have something to send out an emergency rescue signal, it should not be faster than his speed. He will take care of the death of the Tianlong people that will surely come out later. These little brothers next to him shouldn't be implicated. Hayden subconsciously glanced at the dozen or so little brothers gathered next to him and thought. The seemingly long psychological time is actually just a short moment. At this time, the guard standing in front of the Tinlongren, he looked at Hayden's line of navy, and without any warning, suddenly violent. Boom! The roar of stepping slowed down the guard's movement by one step. I don't know the name, nor did it appear in the original work. Hayden looked at the unknown person in front of him. His body was rushing towards the leader of him at a super high speed. Hurry up and take the kid away, Hayden immediately yelled at the Marines next to him. From this speed alone, he immediately understood that this unknown person was also a mess. Next moment, advertisement, a guard who is about the same height as Hayden, his figure has already been attached to Hayden's front. Boom! A loud noise suddenly exploded, and the airwaves visible to the naked eye suddenly spread in all directions, like a violent wind, even blowing down the many Marine soldiers who had just avoided Hayden a few steps, and then fell to the ground one by one. Hayden held the knife firmly to block the man's whip kick that hit him. The special feeling on the blade immediately made him glance at the legs of this man's attack, and the black trousers were glowing with a layer of gloom-armed color. He immediately realized this, and couldn't help but curse in his heart. Although the armed color is a bad street in his understanding, the armed color appears, plus the protection of the two dragons, and only takes him. Oh shit! The guard's attack has not stopped, he is constantly exerting pressure on the blade. Hayden had no choice but to increase his strength to resist. The situation is temporarily deadlocked. The steel-like calf rubbed back and forth on the sharp blade of Shiryuki's sleeve, and sparks sputtered between the two of them. The eyes of the two also collided. Hayden couldn't see any emotion in this man's eyes. From the Navy's eyes, the guard could not see any fear of the situation at the moment, and did not seem to understand the consequences of attacking the Tinlongren now. At this time, the others present recovered from the momentum created by the previous collision. Shalulia Palace, whose body was swayed by the gust of wind, stood unsteadily. After she saw the situation in front of her at the moment, their guards hadn't killed the Navy yet, and her face suddenly swelled with anger. You trash, don't hurry up and kill this group of navies. What are you trash doing? Her sharp voice immediately echoed in this space. Chapter 187, Liberation of Zhanpakudao Knife. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. And the seamen under Hayden got up. Seeing the chief and this guy confronted, they didn't dare to distract the chief, so they had to protect the little girl Lilu from the side. Now, with his eyes fixed on the Navy guard in front of him, he heard the words of the Tinlongren master scolding him behind him. His eyes condensed immediately, and the strength on his legs rose to a new level. At this moment, Hayden also had the same idea. He didn't plan to spend time with this group of people here. He is very clear about what it means to attack the Tianlong people, and he will directly recruit as the generals of the Navy headquarters to destroy them. It may be the uncle of the Warring States period, or it may be Teacher Zepha. Hayden didn't want to embarrass them, and of course he didn't want to die under their hands. Moreover, after the shot does not only mean that the general is coming, it also means that he will cut off the time of the past 10 years and cut off the connection with the Navy today. The friends he has known since he first came to this world until now. Drafted. Hayden, who had been trying to keep calm, looked at the enemy in front of him, and the anger that rose in his heart couldn't be easily suppressed. Now that he has decided to kill the dragon man in front of him, he must immediately get rid of these guys in front of him at the fastest speed. He immediately thought of it. Otherwise, as he had thought before, the Tinlongren might have an emergency signal phone worm directly connected to the Navy headquarters. Although they see that the situation is still on their side, they will not fight over. But after the meeting, in case they use that phone worm. The Chambord Islands are very close to the headquarters of the Navy, and it may not take long to arrive here at the speed of the general. Advertisement. A little time to escape now is a little time. Switching to holding swords in both hands to block the sharply increasing attack in front of him, Hayden suddenly yelled to the Marines next to him. You can hide away from me as far as possible. Words fall. After listening to the commander's voice, the Marines suddenly felt the surrounding temperature drop sharply, and the air seemed to condense into visible crystals in the environment here, turning into a white mist exuding cold air. Hayden had no time to worry about the younger brothers next to him at this moment, and instantly began to solve the sleeve baishui he was holding now. Ling Wu, Shu baishui, Immediately after Hayden's answering voice fell. In the eyes of this guard, the blade in the hands of the Navy suddenly changed, and the shimmering blade turned into an incredibly white blade. He was shocked immediately and realized that the Navy's knife was emitting a chill of ultra-low temperature. Although he touched this blade's leg, he was covered in advance and his domineering arrogance was not affected, but the cold was not just about to invade his body from this part. The spreading cold air was just a blink of an eye, and it spread along his legs to the upper body, and to the parts where the armed color was too late to defend. The terrifying cold froze his body instantly. "You Navy," the nameless guard murmured, his eyes staring at Hayden revealed a look of shock. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi, subsequently. His whole body exerted strength, and the hardened strength of the armed color hiding in his body instantly circulated up and down his whole body. After making a cracking sound, the ice cube was broken. At the same time, his body quickly opened the distance from Hayden, a step back and straight back. However, Hayden's offensive is not over yet, not even the beginning. Scatter it, Senbon Sakura. Advertisement. As soon as this person retreated, Hayden once again began to solve the second Zhanpai. Senbon Sakura in the scabbard on her back reacted immediately after Jifongyu fell. The handle of the knife on his back seemed to be held by something invisible, and he slowly pulled out. The spiritual pressure in the space gradually boiled with Hayden's complete liberation. After a Zhanpaka sword is liberated, it will not affect the spiritual pressure of the surrounding environment without deliberately affecting it. At this time, the two Zhanpaka knives superimposed the rising spiritual pressure, even if Hayden did not deliberately use this abnormally high spiritual pressure to put pressure on the space here. Everyone in this space still felt a sense of suffocation suddenly appeared. As a result, everyone's lungs, trachea, and vocal cords all froze, and even the bubbles above the heads of the two heavenly dragons burst under the abnormal pressure. In addition to Kai Hayden and the dragon guarding two people, everyone in the arena at the moment all had their eyes wide open and their mouths opened wide, looking at the two people in the center of the venue dumbly. Unspeakable fear suddenly enveloped everyone, so that cold sweat was quietly coming out of their backs. This navy is by no means an ordinary kind of navy. The guard who was temporarily retreating watched Hayden's figure and thought to himself. Such an aura that suddenly emerged from this navy was absolutely extraordinary. Just when he wanted to ask the navy in front of him, he suddenly discovered that something strange was emerging from behind the navy. In this underground space, the light conditions are not very good. Thousands of thin blades spewing out from the scabbard behind Hayden, in conjunction with the dim light in the space, turned into petals dyed black. The number of flying cherry blossoms was only a short second, and they gathered behind Hayden into a terrifying number, exaggerated to even cover the field of vision behind Hayden. "What is that? What is that? What is that?" Three overlapping exclamations immediately sounded, from the Tinlongren, the guards of the Tinlongren, and Hayden's little brothers. Everyone's hearts were once again shocked by this strange sight. Advertisement. Thousands of thin blades filled the space, like embers fluttering after the flame burns. At this time, Hayden had decided long ago that he would instantly eliminate the group of heavenly dragons in front of him with the most violent posture. Next moment, thousands of thin blades all over the sky suddenly accelerated, like a violent wind that is impossible to appear suddenly in this closed environment. At this moment, the black embers are like a mad haze from hell, moving towards the direction of the guards of the dragons and the dragons in an instant. At this moment, in the space, only the whistling sound of the mad haze was left. The Tinlongren guard watched the attack that covered the field of vision in front of him, and listened to the sound of howling in the air. He knew that he couldn't take this unusual attack while still protecting the master behind him. Although he didn't know what the attack was, he couldn't cause his master Tianlong people to suffer any harm, even a slight scratch. Evacuate here temporarily. He made this decision in an instant in his heart, and the footsteps under his feet slammed forward, directly towards the Tinlongren behind him. After a while, even if he was abused or even flogged by his master, he had to desperately grab the two masters instantly, and then evacuate from this underground space to the ground. Of course, Hayden, whose gaze had been focused on the guardian of the heavenly dragon, instantly understood as soon as the man made the move to retreat. This guy has no means to protect the sky dragon behind him with this trick, so he naturally intends to take the sky dragon to escape to the ground. Ha ha. Hayden gave a chuckle. Chapter 188. Still want to run for the Lord? Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. The awkward movement of the Tinlongren's guards retreating backwards. The expressions of horror that the two dragons showed when they faced his attack. At this moment that seemed to be frozen, these two images were clearly reflected in the eyes of Hayden and others. Sir, they are going to run. Sir. The seamen who had been hiding from the side saw the actions of the dragonites, and their brains filled their brains with the scene after the dragons escaped, causing them to be startled in cold sweat. Hayden ignored them for the time being, looking at the awkward dragon guards in his eyes. He didn't think these guys could escape to the ground. Thinking too much, brother. Senbon Sakura's pursuit continued, and Shirayuki's sleeve in her hand suddenly raised, and a flying slash shot out from the blade. In this confined environment, the sound of Jian Qi cutting through the air was amplified to the point where it was somewhat permeating. With this casual slash, Hayden distinguished a little bit of his ability to control Qianban Sakura. The sword energy that came out later caught up with Qianban Sakura's mad haze in just an instant. The thin blades all over the sky reacted immediately, gathered into a shape with no gaps on one side and suddenly dispersed, coordinatingly spread out a hole for this sword chi, just to allow the sword chi to pass. Under the stimulus of the crisis, the guards of the Tianlong people instinctively looked back to see this phenomenon. This navy. Advertisement. The thoughts in his heart swiftly moved, and the speed under his feet had increased to the point where he couldn't increase it anymore. He realized that the slash, which came at extremely fast, was not attacking them physically, but attacking the space above the stairs. The navy intended to cut off their retreat directly, and intended to trap them in this place. The mood in the guard's heart was already extremely anxious at this time. If he was facing this situation alone, he still had nothing to worry about, but now he is the only one here, and the lives of the two heavenly dragon masters are already at stake. The guards of the Tianlong people have never seen someone like Hayden. He knew that there were many people who hated his master Tinlongren in this world, but no one had ever dared to attack the Tinlongren directly. Even if it was the Murloc from the previous holy place, Mary Joa, he was brave enough to release those slaves, and didn't dare to actually hurt the life of the dragon. This navy is now ready to be the enemy of the entire world. At this time, the Tinlongren guards had already grabbed a Tinlongren with one hand, and then Hayden's slash cut fiercely into the space above the stairs. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. The tremendous power instantly destroyed the structure of the building above. The sound of crashing sounded, huge rubble fell, and 2 or 3 seconds blocked the only entrance and exit in this space. The original wall of the 5 big men had been restored to the shape of a wall inadvertently, and there was obviously no switch or other things in this space. Immediately afterwards, before the guard who was holding a celestial dragon in one hand could react, the next moment, the endless ashes of hell from Qianban Sakura had already swept in front of them. At this time, the belief in the Tinlongren guard's heart that he strongly wanted to protect his master made him not only think of a method in his mind at this critical moment, but also implemented the method he thought of. Advertisement, that is, using his body and the bodies of 2 slaves to surround and protect the 2 masters of the dragon. Stop. Hayden looked at the scene before him and murmured, "It's ugly." The flying embers of hell, at this moment, were circling around the bodies of the 2 slaves guarded by the heavenly dragon, about to move. Those 2, descendants of the Creator, masters of the world, the guys who were being looked down upon by them at the moment, were surrounded and protected by their bodies, forming an inverted shape. I'm afraid that the 2 celestials are now lying on the ground and are terribly scared. Hayden held a knife handle in one hand, looked at the ugly scene before him, and smiled on his face. Hayden didn't want to kill the 2 slaves together, and the 2 were just victims of this world. The scene quieted down because of Hayden's suspension of offensive. All the sea soldiers hiding on the side could not help but give them a feeling of suffocation due to the suffocation of the commander in front of them. At this time, they could finally take a breath. Seeing the scene before them, they then felt a little confused. In their field of vision, they could only see the commander's previously unseen ability, as if he had stopped around the Sky Dragon people. Has the commander killed the Sky Dragon people? And the 5 big men who came out before, as early as the Tinlongren appeared, they reduced their sense of existence as much as possible. Now, looking at the navy, it seemed that the dragon was actually killed. Seeing the signs that the dragon people stopped their activities that day, the 5 big men immediately realized that the scene before them would be enough to shock the entire sea. The stimulus to the brain was too violent for a moment, and the 5 big men could no longer bear it. They were shocked by what happened in front of them, and they passed out immediately. At this time, advertisement seeing that the dragon guards didn't intend to get up before him, Hayden immediately changed the shape of Chinbon Sakura. The hilt with no blade in his left hand waved in the void, and after receiving instructions from the thousands of thin blades that surrounded the group of Tinlongren, they immediately followed Hayden's control and gathered together. Hayden intends to use the Dragonites to protect his body as a breakthrough point, so that he can kill the 2 Dragonites who are wrapped in him without hurting the 2 slaves. And in the time when the shape was changed in less than a second, he naturally wouldn't be stupidly stuck in such a stalemate as the guard of the Tinlongren. Moment. Pulling the body of a celestial dragon with one hand, his feet slammed up on the ground, and the 3 figures flashed to the place farthest from where Hayden was standing at the moment. However, what the guard did not expect was that perhaps he had also thought of it. The 2 heavenly dragons who had been passively lifted up by him all this time finally got a chance to breathe. The female heavenly dragon named Shalulia Palace, she doesn't care about so many at the moment. You trash. Even if you can't beat the Navy, you dare to treat me like this. The anger she hurled out was not limited to the insults in her mouth. Her feet in high heels kicked the trash in front of her, no matter what situation they were in. And the male Tinlongren named Rosevard Saint, his mood at this time is similar to his daughter's. This waste is really useless. Thinking about this, he also kicked the guard who didn't dare to resist, and the guard kicked to the ground with great strength. Get out of me and I will clean up the Navy by myself, he said. Words fall. Looking at Hayden standing in the middle of the field, he raised the scepter he had been holding to Hayden, and a black hole appeared at the end of the scepter. Chapter 189. A Tinlongren died, there is the last one left. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. Oh. Hayden couldn't help laughing. In sight, the Tinlongren actually planned to use a gun to solve him. After watching the guards take the 2 heavenly dragons and change their positions, he was thinking that this was a good opportunity, and he was going to continue to shoot them directly. However, afterwards, he really didn't expect that after feeling the situation just now, he didn't seem to recognize the gap between them. You guy, the mere Navy dares to disobey my command and wishes, and even dare to attack the descendants of the creator of this world. Saint Roswald, holding a scepter-like spear, shouted at Hayden, now let you know the fate of the shot against me, die for me. Next moment, without any delay, the roaring Saint Roswald frantically pulled the trigger of his spear. Boom. 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 The bullet fired from the muzzle at a super high speed and went straight to Hayden. In the eyes of the Marines on the side, the commander in front of them seemed not to have any intention to dodge. Be careful, sir, quickly get away. They subconsciously shouted towards Hayden with anxious expression. Only, even if Hayden stood there and did not dodge, none of the bullets that hit him hit his body. Hey, your guy's marksmanship is a bit too bad, right? Hayden said to the dragon who shot him. From the moment he shot, Hayden knew that this guy would definitely not hit him, so naturally there was no need to avoid it. One by one, the bullets passed Hayden's side and hit the wall behind. Hearing the Navy's ridicule, the anger of the Tinlongren became more vigorous as if being doused with a barrel of gasoline. The action of pulling the trigger in his hand surpassed his limit. However, advertisement Hayden, standing motionless, showed no sign of being hit. At the same time, he was not going to watch. The 4th breakthrough by Lei. With the tip of the sleeve by Shui's knife releasing the ghost road, a thunder light burst out of the void at the tip of the knife, and it gathered into a ball of lightning in just 2 seconds. Huh! The ball of lightning suddenly shot out a slender beam of thunder. In the eyes of everyone in the field, it took less than a second. The distance between Hayden and the Tinlongren was so great that the lightning beam on the tip of the knife instantly crossed, accurately shot into the muzzle in the hands of the Tinlongren, and penetrated out. Then, it pierced into the Tinlongren's clothing and chest without stopping, then came out from the back, hit the wall behind him, and caused an explosion. The celestial dragon named Rosed Saint died in the eyes of everyone, with a large hole pierced by the thunder pillar, without any room for salvation, completely dead in front of everyone. Then, a chip hidden in Saint Rosevard's body ruptured following his death, and the broken chip sent a message that no one in the field could detect. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. And this message directly crosses this underground space, rises to the sky, and leads directly to a secret room in the Holy Land Mariagioa. At this moment, Hayden's more than a dozen seamen, 2 slaves of the Celestials, guards of the Celestials, and the remaining female Celestials named Zillaria Palace. After everyone suddenly saw this amazing scene, the time in this space really froze. The guard who was getting up was stiff in the Cholulia Palace, the slaves who were locked by the collars and chains, and a dozen sea soldiers hiding beside them. An expression of horror appeared on everyone's face. The truth of the world has been broken before their eyes for 800 years, so they can't help but feel panic. This is a Tianlong people. Then, advertisement with a boom, the corpse of the Tinlongren fell to the ground. The sound instantly astounded everyone who was sluggish at the scene. Sir, he really killed a heavenly dragon. How dare he, how dare he? The Tinlongren is dead. The people who recovered faced the fact that a Tinlongren died, showing their own different reactions. However, don't wait for everyone to have a 2-second break. Hayden didn't plan to stop like this. Su Shirayuki's slashing with an icy breath immediately slammed out, and the Sakura flying in the space also gathered and formed, following the slashing behind and rushed together. Fast! The dragon guards yelled at the last Tianlong person. Cholulia Palace, looking at the scene in front of him that made him extremely frightened. Now he had the chance to call for help outside. Hurry up and call for help to the Navy headquarters. He continued to shout towards Cholulia Palace. The current situation is not the last juncture. He should be able to support the general at the cost of his life. Huh? When the dull Cholulia Palace heard this, the fear of death enveloped her, as if a light suddenly appeared. She immediately took out a red phone worm in her pocket. This is an exclusive phone worm that directly connects to the headquarters of the Navy. There is no need to speak out to indicate the situation. As long as you pick up the microphone, it will automatically default to the Denonite being attacked. Gone, Hayden immediately scolded and swear word. In his eyes, the remaining Tinlongren pulled out something that made him feel terrified. And at this moment, the dragon guard rushed toward Hayden's slash. Advertisement in order to give the last master enough time. He couldn't take care of other things at this time. At this moment, he was fully armed and turned into a black knight wearing a deep black armor that horrified others. Boom! After a sound, he smashed Hayden's slash with only his fist. Looking at the unknown attack that followed behind slash, although he didn't know what the attack consisted of, he didn't need to think about it at this time. Boom! 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 The dark fists immediately bombarded the unknown attack in front of him. The strength of the attack, the speed of the attack, and even the deafening noise in this space. The shock wave produced by constantly hitting the air, it seemed that the space in front of him was stirred by this person's fists, forming an amazing scene in everyone's eyes at this moment. Thousands of thin blades gathered together were directly shattered by this strong impact, and they were not weathered. Oh shit, I'm not playing with you. Seeing that the attack before him was disintegrated by the enemy in an instant, Hayden became angry in an instant. This result directly caused the Dragon Man to pick up that day in his sight. It was probably a signal phone worm for emergency rescue. The enemy's attack in front of him did not stop because of the attack that defeated him. The Tinlongren guards did not retreat but moved forward, rushing towards Hayden's body. His fists never stopped swinging. Special. Hayden scolded at the attack that was about to hit him. He wanted to control Chianbin Sakura to block, but he couldn't gather back temporarily after being defeated. At the same time, the Tinlongren on the opposite side had already held the microphone to his mouth. F*K. Chapter 190 GN Shi rushing to the surface. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. Things are so bad that they can't be worse. The expression on Hayden's face instantly changed to hideous. There is no way to defend against the attack of this person in front of him. The only way to avoid harm is to dodge. And the only way is to miss the last chance to avoid the signal from the headquarters. After being silent for less than a second, Hayden decided to directly resist this attack. Now, Hayden faced the shock wave from the guard rushing to his front door. Not only did he not stand in place to prepare for the shock, but he directly greeted him with the momentum of the attack. Since it is inevitable, then before the attack power erupts to the highest point, take the initiative to move forward. Is the Navy eager to die? At this time, the guard looked at the Navy in front of him, but he didn't expect this guy to rush up directly. You go to die for me. Hayden roared and ignored the attack that was about to hit him, and the sleeve Baishui held by his right hand severely cut out in the direction of the Dragon Man that day. At this moment, the Dragon Guardian, who launched a powerful attack towards Hayden, watching the movement of the Navy in front of him, realized in his mind that this guy planned to cut out this sword to kill him even if he rushed to resist his attack, the owner. At the same time, he also realized, if he attacked like this and didn't do any response, then this sword would definitely be slashed out, and it would directly cut off his master, the last heavenly dragon. This thing is absolutely impossible to happen again. Thinking of this in his heart, he suddenly made a decision. The fists continued to attack, forcibly twisted his waist, raised his leg and kicked directly at the right hand of the Navy holding the sword in front of him. Hayden's sword was also cut out at the same time. Advertisement: the violent spiritual pressure combined with Hayden's 10-year sword skill training, although it seems to be a flat slash. In fact, the flying slash that burst out of the sword is enough to flatten a mountain with one knife. The Tinlongren guard didn't feel any fear, and he didn't have time to come back and feel anything. The flying slash that Hayden had just formed had already slashed fiercely on his armed left leg. Boom! Slash and kick. The strongest attack from the two at present, like a comet hitting the earth, collided together. As if the world in front of us was welcoming the end, the space was shaken. This amazing scene immediately unfolded before everyone's eyes. Immediately afterwards, the shock wave from the guards of the dragons also slammed into Hayden's face, denting his face directly. However, Hayden did not lose consciousness for a moment, nor did his body shape be repelled by this attack. Although the pain on his face at this moment surpassed any time before, but under this stimulus at this moment, his consciousness was clear beyond any moment. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. He realized that his slash was stopped by this man. On that day, the Dragon Man probably had dialed the phone worm that was directly connected to the Navy headquarters. However, at this moment, Hayden didn't think about anything, he just wanted to kill the guy in front of him in one breath. Right now, Hayden and the Tinlongren were guarding them, their figures stiff in the air. The two of them only rely on the amount of violent violence exerted on each other, enough to support them in the air. At the center point where the two people collided, the center point was like the center of the storm, and the airwave that was set off immediately spread, like ripples, toward all parts of this space. The sight collided. Both understand that the person opposite will never let go easily at this moment. Advertisement: after a long time, it was actually just 2 or 3 blinks. Next moment. After all, Hayden's slash was a bit stronger than the unknown kick. The blade of Shu Baishui had already slowly cut into this person's armed left leg at this moment.
What? The Tianlongren guards couldn't help shouting for an instant, feeling the pain of being cut by a sharp blade on his left leg. And this sword is not just this feeling. The biting cold air then began to penetrate into the body along the cracked part, freezing his perception in this part. The guard watched this scene, and he realized that no matter what the situation is, it is very unfavorable to him. If the stalemate continues, his left leg will definitely be cut off by this knife, and this slash will not only stop after cutting off his left leg. If you just let go, the master behind will definitely be cut off by this slashing blow. You never want to succeed, the Tinlongren guard roared, his eyes condensed while staring at Hayden. Even if he puts on his entire left leg now, he must put out the slash that threatened his master. His left leg began to ignore the sharp blade that had been cut into the flesh, and again applied pressure on the blade, while slowly turning the direction of the blade with his own bones, forcibly adjusting the direction upwards, avoiding the owner behind. Damn it! Feeling the sudden surge of power from this guy, Hayden instantly realized what he was going to do, and he immediately mobilized the power of his whole body to the sword at this moment. However, his power was a step late. I'm Sao. The direction of Hayden's slash was guarded by the dragon, who forcibly reversed the direction of attack. After that, the power that emerged was only an instant, and cut off the left leg of the guardian of the dragon. The remaining slash, whose power was not completely offset,
slashed straight into the top of the circular space. Advertisement boom. At this moment, the slash that was suddenly out of control, the blink of an eye had already risen to the level of more than 10 meters. The fierce spirit pressure launched an attack upwards, setting off a strong wind in the space. The next moment, it was like a knife that was as hot as 1,000 degrees, and it melted the ceiling of the space in less than a second. However, this is not the end. The flying slash did not stop for a moment, and nothing could stop him. Like a giant excavator, it keeps digging up until it breaks open the surface of this small island and blooms over the Shambordian Islands. It was like setting off an oversized firework, which suddenly shattered the bubbles in the sky of 3 or 4 small islands nearby. Oh shit! Hayden cursed after being cut out. He subconsciously glanced at the situation above, and at the same time, a dashed body leapt in front of the guardian of the dragon, and came to the position where his little brothers are now hiding. And the Tinlongren guard who had lost one leg also flashed to his master's side. At this moment, Cholula Palace was shaken to the ground by the airwave caused by the last moment of fighting. At this time, the diffuse dust rolled up by the sword wind gradually dissipated and disappeared. In the eyes of Hayden and the others, beside the Tinlongren fell to the ground, there was a red telephone worm whose microphone had separated from the telephone worm, which was the one that the Tinlongren suddenly pulled out. Although he didn't know that the Dragon Man failed to get through that day, he understood that it was time to leave now. Thinking about this, Hayden turned to look at the group of boys. Everyone still has a dementia expression on their faces, and it seems that they have not recovered from what happened just now. At the same time, from the phone worm that was picked up, a signal was launched instantly, breaking anything and going straight to the Navy headquarters. Chapter 191 Headquarters Surprise Previous Chapter Next Chapter. Advertisement It's 5:36 in the afternoon. Navy Headquarters. The top meeting room of the huge fortress. At this time, it happened that most of the high-ranking Navy was called in for the last meeting of the day before dinner. A meeting room with a rectangular layout in a tatami style. Today, most of the main combat power of the Navy headquarters is gathering, even including several lieutenants stationed at the New World base. Because recently the world government decided to name the next Kiwahai, the Queen of the Amazon Lily Kingdom and the Captain of the Nine Snakes Pirates, Boya Hancock. Many navies took advantage of this opportunity today to discuss related influences and so on. The navies sitting on the ground are General Sengoku, General Zephyr, Lieutenant General Carp, Lieutenant General Crane, Ghost Spider, Huashaoshan, Kuzan, Paluzalino, Sakaski, etc. All the navy sitting cross-legged had a small table in front of them on which was placed some tea, snacks and the like. Marshal Sora was not present today, and it was the Sengoku as a general who was in charge of this meeting. Lieutenant General Carp sat next to him, maintaining the appearance of Kapu, eating senbei carelessly, and making noisy movements during the meeting. Warring states, he directly ignored the bastard sitting next to him, keeping calm and continuing to discuss with others. The rest of the navies were talking individually, but whenever they looked at Mr. Sengoku, they naturally couldn't avoid seeing Lieutenant General Carp. Facing Lieutenant General Carp, everyone could only show a helpless expression, and then they didn't see it. But this time, only halfway through the meeting, Carp was already sleepy. After eating senbei, he immediately dozed off in the middle of the meeting, with big nasal bubbles coming out of his nose. Of course, the rest of the Navy saw this scene, but what can be done? Advertisement as a result, everyone could only look at the two people, Mr. Sengoku and Lieutenant General Crane sitting on both sides of Lieutenant General Carp. At this time, the warring states finally couldn't bear it anymore, and Xiaohei took the lead and hit Carp's head with a punch. Clang! With a crisp sound, the sleeping Lieutenant General Carp immediately awoke. He was interrupted from his sleep, but his temper was not very good. Just when he was about to have a seizure, the big thing is bad. The big thing is bad. A call that made everyone squint rang out in the corridor, and only from the tone of voice, it was possible to know that the owner of the voice was very frightened. Next second, with a bang, the owner of the voice directly smashed through the sliding door at the rear of the conference room, fell to the ground, and rolled in front of the eyes of the high-ranking Navy. This unusual scene naturally made everyone present immediately serious. The seaman who broke in must have something important to report, otherwise he wouldn't break into their meeting so boldly. Sitting in the position closest to the sliding door, the lazy Kuzan, he looked at the seaman rolling in front of him, and immediately helped him up. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. What happened? He asked calmly. The short-breathing Marine soldier, looking at almost all the famous high-ranking Navy in front of him, focused his gaze on him. Although he felt a numbness in his scalp immediately, it was still incomparable to the important things he was about to tell these officers. Dracos. Dracos. Dracos were attacked on the Chambord Islands. A Draco has been confirmed dead. What? The news that the Marines spit out intermittently made this conference room noisy in an instant. The momentum generated by the Navy's surprise caused the Navy who passed the order to fall to the ground again uncontrollably by this sense of oppression in the air. After Sikarsky returned to his senses with a serious expression, he immediately walked up to the soldier and raised the collar he held with one hand. Are you kidding us? Advertisement. As his voice fell, the temperature in the conference room rose instantly. Calm down. Kuzan on the side, grabbing Sikarsky's arm while holding the Marine soldier, motioned. At this time, the Navy that had already stood up also surrounded Sikarsky and Kuzan. The warring states did not speak, but stared at Sikarsky firmly with his eyes. Afterwards, Sikarsky snorted coldly and lifted the seaman's hand and let go. With a boom, the seaman fell on the wooden floor. Then, warring states stared at the seaman's eyes very seriously. What happened? He asked. His tone was very serious, because this seaman obviously couldn't make jokes about the Tinlongren, let alone joking in front of them. Karp, Zepha, Crane, Kuzan, Paluzolino, Sikarsky. And so on the Navy, their eyes instantly focused on the seaman. Everyone didn't have the relaxed look in the meeting just now. At this time, the Marine soldier whose breathing was slightly relieved, he continued to report the detailed situation and said, the emergency signal of the Dragonite was dialed by the other party, and there was also a message from the Holy Land Mary Joa, confirming that a Dragonite died on the Chambord Islands. After listening to this, the high-ranking Navy in a circle fell silent for a while. Although, among them there are also guys who think that the Tinlongren are some world scum. However, everyone present did not expect that one day someone would dare to kill a celestial dragon directly. Do you know who did it? Lieutenant General Crane, who recovered to his senses, asked in a deep voice. The seaman immediately replied, there is no news yet. I only know that the dead Dragonite was killed instantly. In addition, the information from the Chambord Islands said that in the illegal zone area on the 20th, a huge explosion appeared in the sky. The time the explosion sounded was basically exactly before and after the signal came. The warring states and others did not continue to inquire. Advertisement. At this time, Paluzolino remembered something. Where is the Navy on the Chambord Islands? Send them to blockade the scene immediately, he said. When they noticed the explosion, they immediately sent people to the scene. Lieutenant General Paluzolino. The Marine immediately responded. Then, this conference room fell into a short silence again. The person who dared to kill the heavenly dragon directly would definitely become the enemy of the world. The guy who can climb the Chambord Islands will never fail to understand what it means to attack a dragon, let alone kill a dragon. As for boarding the Chambord Islands, people who don't understand what the dragon people represent are idiots. They wouldn't believe that there is such an idiot. Knowing the consequences of the move, this person actually dared to move directly. Everyone immediately thought of the same place in their hearts, exchanged each other's eyes, and understood that they were thinking about the same thing in each other's hearts. Yellow Ape, you are fast, you first go to rescue the Tinlongren. Warring states immediately signaled to Paluzolino. I know. Paluzolino, who stood by, was also a little curious about how sacred this guy was.
Subsequently, ready to set sail, the expressionless General Zhang Guo suddenly uttered and took the lead to go out.
General Zepha followed closely behind. He wasn't dispatched for people like Tinlongren, but to catch this pirate who dared to do anything, and only pirates could do such things. Then Kuzan and Sikarsky spontaneously prepared to go together. The rest of the Navy looked at the four people who had left. One Mr. Warring States should be enough to deal with the current situation, plus Zepha, and Kuzan, Sikarsky, and Paluzolino. Naturally, there is no need for them to be dispatched together. Chapter 192. Previous chapter. Next chapter advertisement. Chambord Islands. It's 5:37 in the afternoon. A sudden explosion suddenly appeared above the illegal zone. This spread was enough to affect the aftermath of the explosion on 3 or 4 small islands nearby, and naturally the criminals and pirates on the nearby small islands were aware of this phenomenon. The calm sunset time on the illegal zone was broken by this explosion in an instant. The loud noise that resounded through the sky really had to make everyone curious. In the past, even if there were people making troubles and fighting around here, it was still relatively rare to have such survivors. After being aware of something good, they immediately began to rush to the place where the explosion rose. As the people who started to move there gathered into the adult stream, and some thought of the lively guys in their hearts, they began to follow the stream of people to the explosion. In a short time, a large group of people gathered and started to move towards the explosion place. Anyway, some people just happen to be full and have nothing to do with dinner. In less than a while, some fast guys don't even take a minute. A group of pirates arrived, the island where Hayden was at the moment, near the place where the explosion rose. Now, the guy who was originally on this small island has been observing the situation around here. Some people happened to see Hayden's sword spirit breaking from the surface to the sky. However, they still couldn't figure out what they saw just now. Advertisement. So, for safety reasons, the guy who was on this island, and the guy who came from a nearby island at this time, everyone gathered together, looking curiously at the strange big hole in the ground in the front view. You are here before us. What happened here just now? Did those strong guys shoot nearby? Well, we just saw something popping up from the ground ahead. It seems that there is something underground. The numerous pirates and other identity elements who gathered together began to whisper. Then, in the curious eyes of everyone, the edge of the big hole that suddenly appeared on the ground began to slip. Then, crushing the ground to the hollow below, fell to the ground without support. Success! This place is going to collapse. The crowd onlookers immediately realized this, and shouted to remind the people behind, while they began to withdraw from this place as much as possible. Immediately afterwards, read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. As everyone retreated, the rate of collapse of this big hole accelerated. It wasn't just some small stones and sand that fell, but a large area of the ground began to fall. The underground space a few minutes ago. Seeing the light shining straight from the sky in front of him, Hayden knew without thinking that the slash he had just shot must have directly penetrated the ground. Turning his eyes to the Tinlongren guard with only one leg left, he was now helping the female Tinlongren to stand up. At this time, Hayden didn't have the previous desire to kill the dragon. The dragon man seemed to have sent a signal to the Navy headquarters that day, and nothing seemed to be saved at the moment. Advertisement. After the 2 female Tianlong people will be killed, now they have to transfer these little brothers out quickly, so that they can find a place to run quickly. Looking at the group of boys in front of him at this moment, Hayden glanced at the time subconsciously, and the watch on his left hand showed 5:38. It seems that today will be a sleepless night, he thought with a wry smile. Immediately afterwards, just when Hayden wanted to explain to the younger brothers what happened next, from the big hole that was blasted out of the head, the light projected from it seemed to be slightly obscured by something. Immediately, everyone in this underground space heard something falling from above in their ears, and then saw a slap like a small stone falling on the ground in front of them. At the same time, everyone felt that the surrounding space seemed to shake slightly. Before everyone could understand it clearly, the slight shaking suddenly magnified, turning into an aura that resembled the collapse of the sky and the earth. Here is going to collapse. Everyone in this space immediately realized the obvious future in front of them. Hayden couldn't help cursing inwardly at the movement. Even for him, it is definitely too late to flee from the ground to the ground with a dozen seamen. Sir, what can we do about this? We are going to be buried. We are going to be buried, sir. The seamen in front of Hayden's eyes suddenly began to panic. Now this is not about encountering a strong enemy, but they will be pressed by the earth, unless they can move to the ground instantly. Otherwise there is no way to resist the fact that this will be buried. Gather all of you here. Hayden gestured to the seamen in front of him calmly, and then shouted to the 2 bewildered slaves who were kneeling on the side. You 2 will also give me a fright. Come. Faced with the imminent death situation, the two slaves with a chaotic brain suddenly realized that the Navy, wearing a Navy injustice in front of them, was calling for the two of them to pass. Immediately, the body involuntarily moved towards the Navy wearing the Navy justice coat. Advertisement, but it's okay. Faced with the situation that is about to be buried, Hayden's hand has not been played out. He still has a trick that can just deal with the immediate crisis. Hayden looked at the people standing around him, and he silently began to prepare for the defensive formation. Bound Dao's chants were whispered in his mouth, over and over again, as far as possible before the boulders above fell on them, strengthening the strength of the Bound Dao defense formation. Then, the 73 of Bound Dao, Fallen Mountain Crystal. Under Hayden's multiple chants, in an instant, 4 defensive formations were fully raised, overlapping each other, wrapping all of them inside to protect them. The Marines surrounding Hayden and the last 2 slaves who came in, looked at the energy shield in front of them, and couldn't help exclaiming, "What is this? This is another ability that the chief has never seen before." Seeing the energy shield protecting them in all directions, everyone was very panicked for a second, and it could even be said that they were already very frightened. At this moment, Hayden ignored the yelling of the seamen. Looking at the dragon guard and the female dragon that day, he couldn't think of this guy. Now there is any way to get out of the current situation. Then I saw in my sight that the dragon guard put the unconscious female sky dragon on his back that day, and he stood straight with one leg when he had only one leg left. He glared fiercely in the direction of Hayden, and then turned to the big hole that Hayden had just slashed out. He intends to use this direct access to the ground to escape from this place to be buried in one fell swoop. His figure disappeared from Hayden's sight in a second. At this moment, like the collapse of the Doomsday, Hayden's Reiki felt that the guy was climbing step by step. Unfortunately, the rate of collapse exceeded everyone's expectations. The next moment, under the unharmed perception of Hayden in the energy hood, the guy's Reiki suddenly disappeared. Chapter 193 Tianlong People. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement rumble. Just a few minutes. Near the ground above Hayden and others. At this time, everyone who retreated to a safe distance and continued to observe the situation saw the thick smoke that almost rushed to the top of the huge mangrove in their sight. Now, the crowd onlookers were completely determined. There must be something major happening in the underground where the smoke and dust is rising in front, otherwise it will not happen, and the movement of such a big scene in front of you is coming out. Such a cloud of smoke and dust is more conspicuous than the explosion that sounded in the sky just now. It's good now. Not only the area near the illegal zone, but also seeing what is happening on this small island. Even people in other surrounding areas can see that there are major things that are not normal in the current lawless zone. Some reporters stationed on the Chambord Islands. Why did they choose to station on an island like the Chambord Islands? Naturally, this Chambordian Islands is a must-stop for every pirate who wants to conquer the Great Sea Route. Where lawless pirates gather, it also represents the emergence of explosive news. Reporters with keen intuition, when they perceive the rising of soot. They were in different places and doing different things, and they invariably gave up what they were doing, desperately moving toward the place where the smoke appeared. The thick smoke that has risen hasn't dissipated after a few minutes. Everyone who was observing near the smoke and dust felt as if they were scratched by a cat's claw inside, and they felt itchy. They were anxious, just want to be able to see clearly what happened in this smoke. Some guys were so anxious that they even wanted to go out on their own, smashing away the smoke and dust that blocked everyone's sight in one breath. Then, the rumbling sound in the smoke and dust finally faded away. Advertisement. The people who tended to calm down looked ahead. At this time, the smoke that blocked everyone's vision slowly dispersed and disappeared, showing the scene of the ground collapse. The basin, which may be 100 or 200 meters in diameter, appeared in front of everyone. The ground where the big hole appeared just now, and the ground they are standing on now, is directly lower by a large section. The huge mangrove trees on this small island Yakuman are exposed, with huge roots intertwined. The bare roots are just like the roots exposed at the edge of the island. The people who had a good view of the situation immediately looked around within the collapsed area, and what caused the collapse of this area. Because this small island with huge tree roots as ground support is definitely not a mere geological disaster, naturally caused collapse. There, At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded in a quiet atmosphere. The crowd watching together immediately looked in the direction of the sound, and saw that the owner of the sound was pointing at a place with his right hand. So, they immediately all looked in the direction of this person's fingers. Then, read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. In the eyes of everyone, there was a cave-in, as if something slightly larger was buried underneath by the cave-in, exposing the blue part. What is that? Just as everyone had this question in their hearts. Another exclamation from other people sounded, "There are also there." Everyone then followed the steps just now, looking at the master who was exclaiming, and then at the place of his finger. Then, at this moment, everyone is surrounding the edge of this collapsed area. I saw another place in the collapsed area, who seemed to be someone, and slowly moved away the huge stone that was pressing on his body, revealing his figure. Advertisement. All the onlookers focused on the person who appeared. The clothes on this man were already torn and covered with blood. Moreover, he seems to be missing a leg. Everyone was feeling puzzled, but noticed that looking at the corner of this person's line of sight, there seemed to be a person on the ground where he stood. It can be seen that the robes, which were originally pure white in color, are decorated with many exquisite patterns. This is completely different from the clothes that everyone wears on the market. It instantly reminds everyone who often stays on the Chambord Islands. The clothes seem to be worn only by Tianlong people, it seems to be. Then why doesn't that person have a bubble above his head? Are you an idiot? In the situation just now, did you still protect a bubble? Then why is that? The heavenly dragon, who is now lying on the ground unconscious. The people who were talking about it were all asked by the questions that I didn't know who sent them. When everyone looked at me and I looked at you, the big guy's expression on his face was basically not clear about the situation. Just thinking of the possibility of the Tinlongren, everyone's brains seemed to be frozen, unable to function normally. If it were a Tinlongren, the Dragon Man fell to the ground that day, and now his life and death are unknown. If it's not a dragon, then why would that person dare to wear the clothes of a dragon on this Chambord Islands? Guru. Everyone standing here watching, somehow, couldn't help swallowing saliva. Immediately afterwards, I didn't know what happened. Everyone looked at each other's eyes, even though they might be a little unpleasant on this island. But at this time, everyone has the idea of wanting to leave this place. It's nothing good, that's it, go away. One by one, the onlookers said with a grin, advertisement. The steps began to slowly retreat, moving his body a little bit, with the intention of leaving here as soon as possible without others realizing. And this time, newspaper reporters with noses better than search dogs, they rushed to the scene of the accident here at an instant speed. The pirates who came here to check the situation first did not embarrass these reporters. After all, they also need these reporters to increase their visibility. Click, click, click. The reporters who rushed here, the camera phone bugs in their hands kept flashing. At the moment, the scene of the collapsed area was recorded by them with photos. Some well-capitalized newspaper reporters not only took out the camera phone worm to record, they even took out the video phone worm to capture everything that is happening at the moment. They also quickly noticed the person who was suspected of being a dragon. Feeling puzzled, they immediately used the function of the phone worm to zoom in on the image taken on the suspected Tianlong. The camera was aimed at the person wearing a white robe lying on the ground, and slowly adjusted to the person's face. Woman. After a reporter saw what this man looked like, he murmured and frowned. Immediately afterwards, just as he was thinking about why this person's appearance made him feel so familiar. Click. A thunder suddenly split in his heart. Heaven, heaven, Tinlongren. He couldn't help but exclaimed, and the phone worm he was holding fell from his hand. Chapter 194 Live broadcast worldwide. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. The reporter who exclaimed. After seeing the look of the person lying on the ground, the look of this woman immediately overlapped with the look of a female Tinlongren in her mind. As a resident in the Chambord Islands, he is a news agency reporter. Professionalism has allowed him to keep in mind all the appearances of the dragons who often appear on the Chambord Islands. After seeing this woman's appearance for the first time just now, he never thought that this woman would be a celestial dragon. However, when he looked at it a second time, the clothes this woman was wearing, and the guy who was standing next to her, who seemed to be dying at the moment like a bodyguard. If the woman who fell on the ground was not from the celestial dragon, he dared to directly swim with the butterfly. At the same time, exclamation from the reporter. It was as if the fuse of the explosive package was suddenly lit in the crowd. The crowd on the side exploded immediately. The reporter who uttered the exclamation was considered to be a small celebrity in the Shambordian Islands, and what he said was more convincing among everyone. However, this is not exactly the reason that caused the fright of everyone. Rather, because before the reporter called out the identity of the person lying on the ground, they were the first to find out that they actually knew the identity of that person in their hearts, but in their hearts, they couldn't believe this fact. Now, this silent fact was broken by this reporter. The people around instantly exploded the pot. One by one, there was a very flustered expression on his face, and at this time, he couldn't take into account that he didn't dare to make big moves in order to fight for meaningless face. Everyone who is watching is like a demon escaping from the abyss in the collapsed area now, lest it be too late, for fear of delaying here for another second. Advertisement: the Chambord Islands are over. Run away, Admiral and warships are coming soon. Everyone shouted all kinds of words that naturally came out because of fear. The majestic pirates on the island only thought that the Admiral would come here soon. Their attitude had been abandoned and they didn't know where to go. In the collapsed area, Hayden, who protects everyone. At this moment, he suddenly noticed that a few kilometers away from where he was now, there was a very clear spiritual pressure even if he didn't concentrate on sensing it, and it was coming here at a super high speed. And this ray pressure, which moves at an astonishing speed, is full of the kind of ruthless aura that can only be found in nature. F*K. He couldn't help cursing inwardly. He was just about to cancel the defensive formation in front of him, and then ran away after killing the Dragon Man that day. But this is the situation now. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. The master of this terrifying Ryotsu, Hayden, had seen one before. Combined with the sudden appearance of the ray pressure just now, the owner of ray pressure should now have only one of the three familiar generals in the original, the great General Huang Yuan. Leaving aside for now, his strength hasn't reached Huang Yuan's current level. Even if it is reached, he still hasn't learned how to be armed and domineering. This tells him how to chop a natural shining fruit ability. Not only is the speed and ability of the flashes very unfavorable to him, but now Hayden can't even hurt his entity. It's a big game. This time is really a big game. Through the overlapping defensive formations, and staring in the direction of Huang Yuan, Hayden muttered, whose head was about to explode. "Sir, what should we do now? Sir, or let's just run away." "Yes, sir." Advertisement: the seamen who surrounded Hayden at this moment did not realize how critical the situation was. Seeing that the officer in front of them seemed to be in a state of irritability, they all began to make their own suggestions. The contemplative Hayden looked at the Marines in front of him, and the little devil who had been protected by them. He could deal with this incident alone, and he didn't need to involve these guys. Hayden thought to himself, and then made a secret decision. He didn't have any extra explanations. Looking at their eyes that pinned all their hopes on him at the moment, he opened his mouth and said, "Pile all your weapons in one place, and then gather together to tie yourself. Now the support of the Navy outside has arrived, but they are not here for us now. Only in this way can you survive," Hayden said seriously in an unquestionable tone. After all, if he is the only one, he still has such a lost opportunity to escape from this island. But if you need to bring more than a dozen of them, not only will you be dragged down, but their lives will definitely be affected. This method is the only feasible method. This method must be feasible. "Sir, did the headquarters support come so soon?" The support called by the Dragon family that day was not a general. "Sir, what else can you do?" All the Marines immediately realized this. Although they all knew how powerful the current leader was, they were never able to compete with the general. Hayden looked at the seaman who was worried about him, and said, "Okay, calm down." Then he urged, "Hurry up and do what I instruct, I have another way." Hayden's expression at the moment when he was speaking, as if he really had a way to deal with it. In the eyes of all the Marines, they felt that there was something else the officer hadn't tried, and it seemed that there was a way to deal with the general. Thinking of this, although they felt a little unbelievable in their hearts, they then honestly followed the commander's instructions and tied themselves up to make a situation threatened by the commander. Afterwards, Hayden did not dare to waste time. In the eyes of a group of reporters who were not afraid of death, but were afraid that there was no news, a figure suddenly appeared in a place buried by a few huge rocks. And it seems to be wearing a Navy uniform? The reporters couldn't help narrowing their eyes and looking carefully. It seems to be the Navy's justice coat, they thought. Then, they watched. This figure in Navy clothes went straight to the place where it was now confirmed to be a dragon. Advertisement: are you going to protect the Tianlong people? Sure enough, there must be some guys brave enough to attack the Tianlongren directly. Even when the Navy and the Dragon Guards were present, they still dared to attack. How courageous this attacker is. The reporters' onlookers began to speculate in their hearts. The attention of observing this Navy's posture is more focused, for fear of missing any detail. The various recording telephone bugs in his hand also pointed at the moving figure of the Navy. Even some smarter reporters have already turned on the live broadcast equipment after confirming the identity of the Tianlong people. The live signal is transmitted to other areas of the Chambord Islands, and the terminals in the remaining areas can then be used to transmit to nearby islands, and then the nearby islands can be transmitted to other islands. The dots are connected to form a line, and the line weaves a world web. After receiving the live broadcast in other areas, the faces of people watching showed unknown expressions, watching the Navy running in a ruin in the picture. Immediately afterwards, in the eyes of the reporters, in the eyes of the live phone bug, in the eyes of the audience watching the live broadcast, Hayden held his sleeve Baishui, which was restored to a normal state, and went straight to the place where the Tianlongren had fallen. In almost a short time, he directly crossed the distance and came to the unconscious Tianlongren. Seeing that he was dying next to him, he was forced to look at his guard without any movement. Although Hayden didn't have the habit of shooting against opponents who couldn't fight back, he had to shoot at this moment. "Hell is waiting for you," Hayden murmured, ignoring the guard's eyes. "Hand up the knife and drop it, simply and neatly." At this moment, under countless gazes from around the world, wearing a Navy justice coat, he pierced a sharp blade straight into the chest of the Tianlong man wearing a white robe. Chapter 195 Crisis. Huang Yuan arrived previous chapter. Next chapter advertisement. Wait, was I dazzled just now? Dizzy, right? Yes, I also seem to have a little flowery eyes. Is it an illusion created by the guy who attacked the dragon? Now, the onlookers who knew what the Navy did just now, the reporters' onlookers did not understand in their hearts what the Navy did just now. The brain is unable to process this scene that is happening in front of me for a while. It is really incomprehensible. The Navy who was supposed to be in the same camp was supposed to protect him. After going to the comatose Tianlongren, he took the sword in his hand and put it straight into the Tianlongren's chest. Okay. The reporters' onlookers repeat this process in their brains to make this scene easier to understand. However, after a while, isn't this killing the Tianlongren? Thinking of this in my heart, he involuntarily screamed in his mouth at the same time. What? The Tianlongren is dead. The reporters who came back to their senses immediately can no longer maintain the previous calmness, as if the world lost its color at this moment. It's one thing to attack a dragon, but killing a Tianlongren directly is definitely not the same thing. Without even thinking about it, you can know that this is an explosion that shocked the entire world, and it is an event that is enough to leave a significant mark in the history of the world. At the same time, other regions. Advertisement. The audience who were watching the sudden broadcast of the live broadcast, at first they didn't understand what the live broadcast was actually playing. It was just a Navy activity on the screen. But at this moment, looking at the picture, after the Navy pierced the sword into someone's body, the live broadcast was suddenly sluggish for a while, and then there was a violent shaking. At the same time, in the shaking picture, the audio from the live broadcast immediately made everyone feel puzzled. What is the death of Tianlongren? How many things is that guy doing on the live broadcast? In a small tavern on an unknown island, at this moment in the evening, a large group of people who came in Lu Zui gathered in the tavern. A grumpy guy watched this inexplicable live broadcast, and then began to bluff. The live broadcast fool should be thrown directly into the sea to feed the Sea King. That's right. Correct. The echoing sound then sounded, followed by the sound of swigging and refreshing. But, unlike this group of people who started to yell, Some people who are careful and knowledgeable start to think in their hearts. The information on the screen shows that the live broadcast is from the Chambord Islands. The bubbles that appeared in the screen just now are also characteristic of the Chambord Islands. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Those world aristocrats Tianlong people also often appear on the Chambordian Islands. The reporter who started the live broadcast obviously couldn't dare to talk nonsense about the Tinlongren. Then, there will be the last one. It seems that there is absolutely no possible truth, but in fact it is extremely real. It happened in the eyes of all of them just now, in the eyes of the whole world. Then, there was an exclamation sound from the tavern, piercing the roof and rushing into the sky. At the same time, the scene in this tavern took place in various places, large and small, as long as it was the area that received the live signal. East China Sea. A red-haired pirate was in a small tavern, and his crew, watching the video played by the live phone bug brought by the younger brother. Advertisement right when it was entertainment time for them. They were so shocked by the scene they saw at this moment. So much so that they have seen most of them, the winds and waves, and they are shocked like they have seen it for the first time. Hey, the people on this live broadcast are playing movies, right? Then how dare the Navy kill a celestial dragon directly? The crew members who had been talking about it for a while, each thought of explanations. And the red-haired pirate sitting in the main seat. After seeing this scene, he felt that it would be better to stay in Donghai for a while. This world is about to change the sky. He lowered the brim of the straw hat on his head and murmured in his mouth. The first half of the Great Route. On a small island full of exotic customs. A beautiful woman, wearing an exquisite long dress, was at a bar in a hotel, shaking slightly with a glass of cocktail. The bright big eyes looked at the live broadcast above the bar counter, and looked at the live broadcast screen windlessly until the lens zoomed in. Enlarged to the picture, only the man in the navy justice coat is left, and the man in the white robe lying on the ground. Snapped. After she saw the face of the man in the navy coat, the glass in her hand slipped between her fingers and shattered on the ground. And this person who made her emotionally agitated suddenly, what he did at this moment made her feel even more surprised. His eyes widened and his red lips slightly opened. New World. A big pirate with the title of the world's strongest man, and his sons sitting around him, watched the live broadcast. A man with the title of the strongest creature sat on a cliff and watched the live broadcast taken by his men at this moment. A woman at one of the apex of the New World Sea, sitting on the throne, watching the live broadcast in front of her. After seeing the Navy in the picture, the three of them were so courageous to directly kill a Tinlongren. Each of them reacted differently. But, although the reactions were different, the three of them had an interest in the Navy in their hearts. After all, even if they have the power to dominate the sea, they will not do things that are not beneficial, and they will have to suffer the consequences of the anger of the entire world government and Navy. Advertisement: this Navy is either stupid or has strong confidence in its own strength. Of course, it is also possible that it is simply silly. The three people at the apex of the New World began to look forward to the next development, with smiles on their faces. He turned his eyes back to the Chambord Islands. The reporter's onlookers were all frightened by the reality before they fell to the ground. Immediately afterwards, a reporter who was so frightened that he fell to the ground. He suddenly heard it, as if someone was making a noise in his ear, so close as if he was on his shoulder. He felt his nerves pulled instantly, and heard an unfamiliar voice sound. Is there the Dragonite who sent out the distress signal? Lieutenant General Peluzolino of the Navy headquarters, who was named Huang Yuan, rushed to the site of the collapse at this moment. At this time, only a dozen minutes have passed since the collapse. However, what he didn't expect was that even he rushed to the scene at such a speed. The Tinlongren who was spotted in his sight now hadn't had time to catch up to rescue at his speed. Huang Yuan's face was rarely seen at this time, and the usual indifferent expression revealed a solemn face. A Tinlongren died before his eyes, and his gaze then moved to the person next to the Dragonman's body that day. The white navy justice coat fluttering in the wind, holding a blood-stained sword in his hand. Then the hand under the navy? Huang Yuan's question didn't need to be answered by others, and he murmured. He immediately confirmed the situation: the Navy killed the Tinlongren. Chapter 196 Encirclement. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement a little bit ahead on the sea. A fleet of 10 warships with the highest configuration of the Navy headquarters is currently sailing on the sea. However, when these 10 naval warships alone are enough to flatten an entire island, these 10 warships still carry the Navy, and all of them are famous naval powerhouses. General Sengoku, General Zephyr, Lieutenant General Kuzan, Lieutenant General Sakaski. The combat power of 2 admirals, and 2 lieutenants who almost reached the strength of the generals, plus their respective adjutants, plus the thousands of elite marines carried on 10 warships, even the Demon Order did not terror. Such a combined fleet, if it were not for the apex monsters in the New World, no pirates would dare to confront it. At this time, the 4 people from the Warring States period gathered on his warship, discussing the impact after this. The attack on the Tianlong people will inevitably lead to some chain reactions of pirates all over the world. The field that has not been broken for more than 800 years has now been opened up. If the decision is not made cautiously after this, it is likely to cause some very terrifying things to happen. The people sitting around a big round table couldn't imagine how serious the impact was. Boom! On the side of Sakaski, he clenched his fist and hammered the tabletop suddenly, and said solemnly, "You must directly kill the criminal who attacked the Dragonite. There must be no mercy." Sakaski, with a serious expression, what he said at the moment still had some truth. The Tianlong people were attacked not only on behalf of the world government, but also on their navy. The criminal who attacked the Tianlongren must have known that in this case, he would be dispatched directly, but he did it anyway. Sakaski. Zephyr said solemnly on the side, "Since that person has committed a crime, he should be imprisoned in Advanced City." The atmosphere above the round table suddenly became a little nervous because of Zephyr and Sakaski. Advertisement, okay. Warring States spoke at this time to ease the atmosphere. The sea in front of me is likely to be rioted for a period of time, but what is going on with the Navy itself fighting first? As for Kuzan, who was sitting on the sidelines, he had no intention of joining the discussion in front of him. Then, just when the atmosphere became a little stiff, suddenly, a seaman rushed in a panic. "Warring States General, Warring States General." A reporter from the Chambord Islands is broadcasting the Tianlongren incident. After he broke in, he stood in front of the Warring States period, panting and hurriedly said, and at the same time handed a phone worm for the live broadcast with both hands. "What?" the Warring States exclaimed, took the phone worm in his hand, and opened it immediately. The Zephyr trio on the side, the expressions on their faces at this time, were almost equally surprised. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. Everyone's eyes immediately focused on the image released by the phone worm in front of them. In the picture, at this moment, just as it was playing, Hayden stabbed the knife into the scene of the Dragon Man. Who is that person? The question of the 4 of Warring States appeared immediately. Not only to the man in the Navy uniform, but also to the Dragon Man lying on the ground. Although the person lying on the ground seemed to be a celestial dragon, if the Navy combined with that person's movements combined with his movements, the person lying on the ground could not be a celestial dragon. It's true that one of the Tianlong people died, but how could it be done by someone from their navy? Advertisement. The 4 people in the Warring States period couldn't help looking at each other's eyes, feeling a little weird for the thoughts that had just appeared in their hearts. However, immediately followed, after the live broadcast, there was a scream in an instant, screaming the death of the Tianlongren. Then, the screen shook violently for a while, and it was temporarily invisible. The meeting room, where there were quarrels before, fell silent for a moment. Realizing what happened to them just now, the expressions on the faces of the 4 of them changed drastically, and their faces sank at the same time. After a while, the Warring States period was the first to recover, and immediately shouted to the waiting subordinates, "Hurry up and notify the Navy in Chambord to cut off all the live broadcast signals for me." After that, the Warring States and Sakarsky walked out of the conference room one after another. However, Zephyr and Kuzan, they were still sitting on the chairs in the conference room, and there was no movement. The atmosphere in the conference room became serious inadvertently. Zephyr looked at Kuzan, and Kuzan also looked at Teacher Zephyr at the same time. His eyes collided. There was a guess in their minds about the Navy's identity that they didn't want to guess right. Although there is no clear picture of the Navy's face. However, the height of the person, The knife in his hand and the knife on his back, both of them looked familiar. ZZ back to now. In the air near Hayden, there was an unusually powerful energy response, which affected the spiritual child in the space, sizzling. People in this world don't actually have the death pressure on Hayden. Advertisement. It's just in his perception that these powerhouses who are beyond ordinary people, generally speaking, their own aura and the like, will affect the spirit of the air, and thus be observed by him. Now this moment. It was just less than 100 or 200 meters away from him. An ultra-high energy reaction suddenly appeared, which instantly stirred his nerves. He reacted subconsciously, driving his own spiritual pressure, and rising by himself due to this sense of oppression, to resist it. Feeling this pressure, Hayden couldn't help but see a little cold sweat behind his back. Then, Hayden flicked the dirty blood on the blade of Snow White's sleeve, then turned to look at the situation near the moment, and looked at the place where Ryotsu appeared. I saw that, 100 or 200 meters away, at the edge of the surface at normal height. A guy who was taller than a normal person was standing there, wearing a coat of the same style as his body and wearing a gray striped suit. And that person's face was exactly the Lieutenant General Huang Yuan he had previously guessed. Only from the posture of Huang Yuan standing there, Hayden didn't need to see this person's face so clearly that he could distinguish it. Although he is now a Lieutenant General, he knows that the strength of this guy is basically the same as that of a general. Subsequently, on the left and right of Huang Yuan's current position, one after another, teams of seamen appeared on it instantly. Seeing this, Hayden couldn't help frowning. The body followed the position where the seamen appeared, turning a little bit, until in his line of sight, it looked like countless seamen, surrounding the collapsed area where he was standing now. I looked around and found no place, not blocked by the Navy. And the reporters were all driven away by the incoming Marines. However, in the face of this level of explosive news, it is absolutely impossible for them to leave like this honestly. Chapter 197 Fight with Yellow Ape. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. Since your Navy won't let me on the ground, we will go to the sky and continue the live broadcast. The reporters all took special bubble flying tools to continue filming over the area blocked by the Navy here, presenting this big event that has shocked the world to people all over the world. Then, with Hayden's movement, the Yellow Ape who had been observing Hayden, he also got the clear face of the Navy who killed the Tinlongren. Hey. 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 Huang Yuan narrowed his eyes and muttered after seeing the Navy clearly. Although he has no impression of this Navy, he still has a little impression. This Navy seems to be Kuzan's kid, like Major General Hayden? Thinking of this, Huang Yuan did not continue to observe, and his body burst into a dazzling light. For a moment, Huang Yuan's figure appeared in front of the Navy in the collapsed area in the eyes of the Marines surrounding this area. F*K. Hayden cursed secretly, and instantly assumed a defensive posture while holding the knife. The speed of the Yellow Ape was beyond his expectations. As soon as the Yellow Ape reacted, he was already prepared in his mind, but he still had no time to react. But he will. Why didn't he attack me directly? Hayden, who was guarding the Yellow Ape in front of him, couldn't help but feel a little puzzled. Huang Yuan, who was walking closer now, did not confirm the situation of the little devil in front of him. Instead, he directly ignored his reaction, squatted down and first looked at the Tinlongren who was stabbed by this little ghost's knife. Looking at the undamaged face of this female Tinlongren, he confirmed that this Tinlongren is the real Tinlongren. Death is also a complete death. There is no sign of anger, even if it is a little. It is estimated that there is no time for treatment. Well. Huang Yuan's face sank instantly. Major General Hayden, you have pierced the sky now. He turned his back to Hayden, said lightly, and slowly stood up. Advertisement. Hayden heard the terrible future of the next moment from the plain tone of the Yellow Ape in front of him. Hayden frowned and shrugged. It's okay. Kill the dragon people and save the world, the righteous Navy. After being silent for a moment, Huang Yuan turned his back to Hayden and said, the little ghost is really terrible now. Then he turned around and faced Hayden. Do you know what you did just now? There was a moment of doubt on his face. However, he looked up and continued. Well, but it is not very important now. There is no room for recovery after doing this kind of thing. He looked at Hayden's eyes with a trace of pity. For the sake of being a Navy, you still honestly, let me kill you here. Huang Yuan paused when he said that, as if thinking of something terrifying in his mind. He reacted immediately on his face. He went on to say, otherwise, wait for others to come. Wait for the dragon people and their troops to come. Then you are not. It's just as simple as being killed by me. At this moment, Huang Yuan showed a genuinely good look for Hayden. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. After listening, Hayden really believed what Huang Yuan said in front of him. But he would not die here, nor would he fall into the hands of the Tinlongren. After a moment of silence, Hayden's posture holding the sword remained unchanged, staring at the yellow ape in front of him, and murmured. Vaguely reveals a turbid coat of arms, untamed and mad talent, surges, denials, paralysis, and moments hinder eternal sleep. The crawling iron princess, the clay doll that constantly self-harms, combines, rebounds, and extends to the ground, knowing your own weakness. Hayden read the chants super fast. At the same time, when Huang Yuan was puzzled, when he didn't realize what he was doing, or when he was not going to stop Hayden at all, Hayden finished the whole passage. Advertisement. As the ghost road was about to end, the surrounding space suddenly changed greatly. Huang Yuan stood on the spot, looking left and right, feeling the visible pulling sensation in the space. He was not prepared to stop this little ghost's intention. Immediately afterwards, Hayden was sweating on his forehead because he was preparing for a ghost. At this moment, his expressionless face finally showed a smile. Since you can't hit you, then seal you up and run away directly. See you again from Nima. Thinking like this in his heart, Hayden couldn't help but shout out the last step of the ghost way. 90 Broken Road Black Coffin. Boom. Hayden's left hand burst into purple and black energy out of thin air, like a cloud of thunder that was swimming. Moment. The purple-black thunder shuttled to Huang Yuan's body. At the same time, Hayden, who had released the ghost way, had already kicked the ground, and pulled back from the yellow ape. Oh, Huang Yuan looked at the energy surrounding him, as if this thing was going to wrap him. At this moment, he finally remembered why he had a little impression of this kid. The abilities of this kid are still diverse. Just as Huang Yuan sighed, the purple-black thunder had wrapped him in a blink of an eye. In the eyes of the surrounding seamen on standby, it seemed that Lieutenant General Palelizano was swallowed by a coffin that appeared out of thin air. Advertisement. At this moment, after leaving Hayden in front of Huang Yuan, he was trying to maintain the black coffin for as long as he could, and then ran to the edge of the island without looking back. He didn't know how long the black coffin could trap the yellow ape, but now as long as he could escape into the sea, he should be safe. Fortunately, there was no curiosity, and decided to eat a devil fruit to play. Hayden thought fortunately in his heart. Although the yellow ape's flash attack can shoot into the sea to produce an effect, as long as he dives in one breath, the deeper the dive, the better, then there should be no problem. When he gets to the sea, it will be fine even if the Navy's support arrives. The strong are basically those with devil fruit ability. If someone who is not a demon-capable person sneaks into the sea to hunt him down, then his sleeve Baishui will kill him. Hayden was thinking, and in the next second, he saw that he had now come to the edge of the island. I noticed the huge tree roots that suddenly appeared in front of me, and the blue water that filled the gaps between each island. Hayden's face couldn't help showing a smile that was happy because he was about to be safe. See you again, the Navy, he muttered to himself. Then, a sound that made him feel horrified rang in his ears. As if the speaker had pierced his eardrums, he instantly tightened the loose nerves in Hayden's heart. Do you want to escape into the sea so that I can't pursue it, kid? At the moment, Huang Yuan, whose speed is consistent with Hayden's speed, said slowly beside Hayden. And Hayden turned his head and looked in the direction of Huang Yuan. Of course, his whole body did not show any signs of being hurt by the 90th breaking road just now. Chapter 198 Lightspeed Kick. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. I'm gone, Hayden cursed immediately. The scene he saw from his side was definitely not what he wanted to see. The yellow ape, who was still in his black coffin last second, now seems to have broken the black coffin at the same time after he left. Then quietly followed by his side, but only now seemed to speak to him. The nerves in Hayden's brain were instantly pulled to a tight state by the appearance of the yellow ape. Hearing Huang Yuan talking to him leisurely beside him, Hayden didn't have the interest to answer him. The speed of kicking the ground with both legs suddenly increased, and he stopped looking at the yellow ape next to him, staring at the sea in front of him. Coming soon, coming soon, coming soon, Hayden subconsciously said silently in his heart, and continued to ignore a big man, who was 3 meters tall next to him, who maintained the same height as his body and speed at the moment. Next moment, Hayden's body has jumped out of the island, flying above the sea. One more second. Hayden focused his gaze below, and his figure had already been reflected on the calm sea. Because of the excitement, the corners of his mouth couldn't help but raised an exaggerated arc, and couldn't help but shout in his heart. Huang Yuan looked at the little devil in front of him and looked at him ignoring himself. He didn't feel angry or anything, but did the little devil think about things, a little too naive. Seeing this little devil jump into the sea immediately, the yellow ape, who was puzzled, of course would not just let the number 1 criminal who attacked the Tinlongren jump into the sea, and then just leave like this. Huang Yuan raised the index finger of his left hand and moved towards Hayden's body. His advertisement, a dazzling yellow flash suddenly emerged from the tip of his index finger, making a strange sound. Hayden, whose gaze was focused on the surface of the sea, immediately heard the movement next to him at this moment. But his eyes didn't look in the direction of Huang Yuan, and he could feel the dazzling light bursting out on the right side. On Huang Yuan's body, the appearance of light was equivalent to the pre-action of his attack. Hayden immediately realized that Huang Yuan was about to attack himself. However, your attack won't hit me, he said silently in his heart, and immediately began to prepare for it. Immediately afterwards, Hayden still did not turn his gaze to the direction of the attack. He kept his gaze on the bottom, the sea within reach. Then, shoo! The flash on Huang Yuan's fingers, just 2 or 3 body positions away from Hayden, instantly shot out toward Hayden's body. Empty cicada. With a whisper, Hayden's body suddenly separated from the coat he was wearing. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. In the eyes of Huang Yuan at this moment. His flash just hit the position of the word justice coat, and then penetrated the kid's body, and the flash continued to shoot into the sea below, causing an explosion under the sea. However, he couldn't help frowning. Although the flash just now had the feel of hitting the entity, his instinct told him that he didn't seem to attack the little devil. Then, just when he was puzzled, Hayden, who was melted into a hole by the flash of light in front of him, was in Huang Yuan's sight, as if this little demon had already left his sight in the blink of an eye before he realized it. What was in front of him was the dead body of this little devil. At this moment, only the coat he was wearing was in front of him. Oh, this kid is indeed a bit uncomfortable. Huang Yuan couldn't help muttering to himself. He was not annoyed by the situation in front of him. Then, advertisement at this time, it seemed to be a moment slowed down by Huang Yuan. His gaze was locked immediately, and disappeared before his eyes the movement of the little devil. Hayden's figure appeared on the sea in front of him. And this little devil, it seems that his attempt is about to be achieved, and he is about to jump into the sea of devil fruit power that hates them. It seems that this kid is only 1 second away from the completion of killing 2 dragon men, but escaped from the Navy without any problems. This kind of super event capable of overturning the entire sea is only 1 second away. But Huang Yuan doesn't think so. His body suddenly transformed into a mass of pure light elements, and before Hayden had time to react, he came to him in an instant. Bad. Hayden's reaction was slow, and his heart immediately became tense. Kong Chan's special footwork is not something he can use twice in an instant. Obviously, this Huang Yuan's movement is about to make some big moves. Next moment, just as Hayden was thinking about countermeasures quickly, when he seemed to be stunned, the flash of light condensed in Huang Yuan's hand again, in the blink of an eye, shot out towards Hayden, who was unprepared. This time, the distance that Huang Yuan attacked was not only a short 50 centimeters, and Hayden hadn't had any reaction time yet. With a beam of super powerful flash, it instantly penetrated Hayden's right arm. Although Hayden can perform swordsmanship with both his left and right hands, he uses his right hand the most. This casual attack directly abolished him, almost 30 or 40 strength. In the current situation, he must use all his strength, and even wish he could use the strength beyond the limit, so that he would have a chance to be pregnant. Hayden spit out a mouthful of red blood uncontrollably, and the sharp pain from his arm in his brain stimulated him to lose his consciousness. Advertisement: the right arm was melted into a big hole that was about to break. The entire right arm, where the forearm is now connected to the upper arm, only some flesh remains unbroken. Now, as long as there is a gust of wind, no strong wind is needed, only a slightly stronger wind than the breeze, you can directly tear off Hayden's left hand. However, Huang Yuan's attack didn't end there. Although Hayden endured great pain at this moment, in a blink of an eye, he immediately regained his sanity after losing consciousness. He forced himself to ignore the continuous pain in his arm. His body must act immediately. Whatever he did was fine, as long as he was left in front of Huang Yuan. Hayden, who had already washed his face with cold sweat, gritted his teeth and moved his limbs vigorously. "Must move, must move, must move," he shouted angrily in his heart, and the expression on his face instantly became savage, like a beast that was forced to a critical moment. Then, he heard the yellow ape on the side, slowly saying in his mouth, "Major Hayden, have you ever been kicked by the speed of light?" Huang Yuan's tone was very flat, as if he was asking Hayden if he had eaten anything. However, listening to Hayden's mind, the meaning of the words, at this moment, he clearly couldn't be clearer. "It's over." Hayden looked at the yellow ape in front of him and thought subconsciously. His left leg has been raised, and his feet are condensed, as if flashes dazzling brighter than the sun's rays. The energy gathered on the flashes has exceeded his imagination. "Call out." Huang Yuan's left leg hit Hayden in the stomach without any hindrance. Chapter 199 Borsellino Kizaru. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement: wow. Hayden, who lost consciousness in an instant, made this strange noise involuntarily, and a large amount of blood spurted out of his mouth, splashing into the sky. He had just endured a violent impact he hadn't felt in his entire life, as if a planet exploded on his stomach. Hayden's body was immediately knocked out by the extremely strong shockwave produced by this explosion. The figure is like a meteor across the sky, straight toward the direction of another small island, and at the same time the sound of a cannonball blasted through the air. It was almost a short period of 1 or 2 seconds. Hayden, who had been knocked off, had already smashed in, leading to the original island, and inside an abandoned house on the nearby island. Hayden's body was really like a cannonball at this moment, directly destroying the house and blasting into ruins. He happened to be buried under the broken pieces of the house. The houses are made of bricks, and each brick has a considerable weight, and Hayden happened to be buried under these ruins, which may weigh more than a dozen tons, even though they were missing. Wow! There were some small gravel, sand and dust on the ruins of the house that was bombed by Hayden, slowly sliding down on top of the ruins of Hayden. The atmosphere went quiet for a while. Now, beating Hayden into such a yellow ape, his figure slowly and leisurely, and then came to the ruins. In his perception of sight, hearing and color, this kid hasn't lost his life yet, but he seems to have temporarily lost consciousness. Having noticed this situation, Huang Yuan had no idea of continuing to attack. He fumbled out a phone worm from the inner pocket of his clothes, and then picked up the phone worm's microphone. The phone worm's message instantly crossed the distance of space and was transmitted to a warship. Quack. The person on the phone worm picked up the phone. Advertisement: Momanosuke, is he a general of the Warring States period? Huang Yuan asked slowly first. At the same time, Hayden was stuck in the gap with a dozen tons of bricks on his body. At this time, he woke up in a spirited spirit, and his consciousness began to flow back into his brain like a tide. Cough, cough, cough. After waking up, his first reaction was to cough vigorously as if his throat was stuck. Feeling that something seemed to be coughing up, he quickly covered his mouth with his right hand, but the entire forearm of his right hand is now gone. It should have been the position of his palm, but now it is empty. F*K me. Hayden cursed immediately. His right hand was cut off directly by Huang Yuan. IF*K. 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 Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. At this moment, his chest was violently ups and downs like a blower. His breathing gradually became heavier, and the anger in his heart was already raging like a tornado. Stimulated by this anger, My chest immediately reproduced the feeling of being pulled when I just woke up. Cough, cough, cough. He couldn't control it again, coughing up blood. This time, he reached out with his left hand to cover his mouth. But he felt that what he vomited was not just his own blood, but also some internal fragments. F*K. There was still some vague Hayden when he was just waking up. At this moment, his emotions have been completely mobilized. The brain's consciousness has automatically shielded the pain in the right hand and stomach. Close your eyes. Consciousness is extremely clear at this moment. Advertisement: the huge stone slab near him. The huge stone on the huge stone slab, the dust on it, the small stone on it, the terrain, the atmosphere in the surrounding air, and the yellow ape who is standing outside. Open one's eyes. Hayden's eyes were full of firmness. I started to recall the previous scenes in my mind, and it seemed that it was the last second that I was about to enter the sea. Just a little bit, just a second away. Hayden confirmed the distance between him and his life just now. Well, just do it again for now. This time, as long as you are a little faster, and a little faster, you will surpass your speed limit. Realizing the power gap between himself and the yellow ape outside, Hayden, who lost an arm, did not give up. He still has another chance, a chance to succeed. Subsequently, Hayden supported the huge slate in front of him with his left hand, and a puff of dust shook off the surface of the slate. He couldn't help narrowing his eyes and looked at the slate in front of him. Then, the strength of the body was poured into the left hand, and he started to push upwards, gritted his teeth, and concentrated. Being pressed at the bottom, I don't know how many tons of stone slabs there are, and he slowly lifted it with one hand. The surrounding objects pressed on the stone slab shook and made a dull sound. At the same time, lying flat on the ground, as he pushed the slate in front of him, his body began to slowly move towards the right side. Looking at the right hand with no small arms in front of him, watching the bloody fractures, his heart was stunned, directly supporting the ground covered with sand and rocks. Ah! The great pain from the fracture made him tremble uncontrollably while shouting. F*K him. Hayden continued to support the stone slab above and the ground below him on one side until the space was available for him to change into a half-kneeled state. After that, he instantly changed his body shape and used his back to temporarily support the stone slab above his head to free his right hand. Advertisement: huh. 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 Hayden was breathing heavily and rested for a while. What is usually so simple, under the current circumstances, is actually so terrifying to consume. Thinking about it, Hayden used his left hand intact and began to show a simple rehearsal, giving basic hemostatic treatment to his right hand and the wound on his abdomen. Fortunately, the two Zhanpakudao were still on his body. While healed Hayden, he was thinking in his heart, and glanced at the two Zhanpai knives on his left waist. Feeling the yellow ape outside, there is no movement yet, but he feels a little strange. That guy can't help but know that I'm here now, right? They should be able to achieve this level. Hayden couldn't think of any reason to stop him from continuing to attack himself. I glanced at the watch with its broken dial on my left hand. The hands on it were still working unexpectedly, showing the current time 6 o'clock in the afternoon. Then, the hemostatic treatment is completed. Hayden, who was soaked with sweat, finally felt better at this time. Afterwards, half kneeling, he once again supported the huge stone slab pressed on his body with his left hand. Slowly exerting force, the slate and all the heavy objects on the slab were immediately lifted by Hayden. Next second. Boom! In front of Huang Yuan. The ruins in front of him suddenly seemed to explode underneath, huge fragments rose up, and tiny bricks splashed. The wounded Hayden slowly walked out from a gap opened by him. Stepping on the top of this ruin, staring at the front at this moment, the yellow ape with a telephone bug in his hand. Chapter 200. Not say a word. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Advertisement. Oh, yes, Mr. Waring states. Huang Yuan looked at Hayden, who had escaped from the ruins in front of him. He made a stunned expression and hurriedly said to the General Zhang Guo on the phone bug. I have confirmed the identity of the Navy that attacked the Dragonites. He is Rear Admiral Hayden of the Navy headquarters. His tone didn't care about this news. It would explode on the Warring States side like a cannonball. What? The Warring States, who was still on the warship, was immediately shocked and yelled out. Hayden? He immediately confirmed to Huang Yuan during the Warring States period? Because of the name Huang Yuan just said, his first reaction was that he might not have heard what Huang Yuan was saying, or it might be Huang Yuan who said it wrong. Otherwise, with such a rare name as Hayden, coupled with his Navy status, then there is only the Hayden he knows. And that Hayden, didn't he go to the Windless Belt to do Kiwahei's mission? Even if he didn't go to the Windless Zone in the first time, it would be impossible for him to kill the Celestials on the Chambord Islands. Warring States thought of many possibilities in his mind for a moment, and fortunately, Kuzan and them were not by his side at this time. At this time, Huang Yuan looked at the phone worm showing Mr. Warring States in his hand, and he immediately confirmed to Mr. Warring States. Yes, it's the Major General Hayden you just thought about. Now he is in front of me. At the moment when Huang Yuan was on the phone leisurely, Hayden, who was standing on the top of the ruins, watched Huang Yuan's conversation with the opposite person, and he learned that the opposite person was General Sengoku. If Huang Yuan is talking with General Zheng Guo now, it is only possible that the following navy is the Uncle Warring States. According to their speed, it is estimated that it should be almost there now, maybe. Advertisement Hayden looked ahead and focused, but didn't put the yellow ape on his body. Despite his present posture, he may have deliberately put out to confuse him, however, now seems to be the best chance of the worst. Wait for me. Hayden thought angrily as he stared at the figure of Huang Yuan.
The anger in his heart, now he can only suppress it forcibly, no matter how angry he is. Now it is impossible to immediately appear armed and domineering, and he can attack the yellow ape.
I wrote down the hatred of this right arm. Next moment. Standing on the top of the ruins, Hayden suddenly jumped up on the ground, preparing to pass the top of the yellow ape in front of him. Behind Huang Yuan is the closest place to the sea. The current route is also the fastest route. Even if there is a yellow ape who directly cut off one of his arms on this road, Hayden now only has to choose the shortest route. Huh! Hayden's figure suddenly disappeared from the top of the ruins. The reaction force of pushing the ground was directly transmitted into the ruins at the foot of the last second, and then caused a second collapse with a rumbling sound. Huang Yuan, who was still on the phone, continued to talk. Read more at hotmtlnovel.zi. The two Dragonites have been confirmed dead, and they are roughly determined to be the hands of Major General Hayden. He is now preparing to get over my head and escape into the sea. While he was speaking, he raised one leg to emit a flash of light and shot towards Hayden, who was currently in the air. Damn it! Seeing the beam of light in front of him, Hayden could only stop his stomping and avoid this attack. Subsequently, his eyes subconsciously followed the direction of the beam, and saw the yellow beam, which hit the Yakuman mangrove tree on this small island, hitting its huge roots. Boom! Advertisement: a terrible fireball suddenly appeared on the huge tree roots, and billowing smoke rose up. Taha! Realizing the power contained in this beam, Hayden, hovering in the air, couldn't help speeding up his breathing rhythm. Fortunately, I was not hit. While Hayden felt fortunate in his heart, he turned his eyes to Huang Yuan, who was still on the phone. At this time, at the end of the phone worm, the Warring States period said to Huang Yuan, "What happened to you just now? Why is it so noisy all of a sudden? Forget it. Wait a moment. Wait until we arrive." Sound? Huang Yuan asked, questioning, and he immediately replied, "Oh, that. Just now Major General Hayden was about to escape, so I moved my legs and feet a little." The phone worm was silent for a second. "Forget it. You'll be there and wait for us first. We're here now. We will come soon." The Warring States hurriedly said, and then directly hung up the phone worm. Okay. Huang Yuan looked at the phone worm in his hand that had changed its normal appearance, subconsciously let out a sound, pondering intriguingly. After that, he made an indifferent expression, shrugged and put the phone worm back in his pocket, looking at Hayden, who was parked in midair at the moment. And Hayden here. When Huang Yuan didn't pay attention to him just now, he failed to leave here at the speed he had just now. Now, Huang Yuan had collected the phone bug and looked at him. Hayden didn't know at this moment, what other way could he leave here instantly. At the same time, he didn't understand why Huang Yuan did not continue to attack. He now feels as if he is a mouse, and Huang Yuan is a big cat whose strength exceeds him too much. Now it is purely in a situation where he is watching himself playing and playing with himself. Advertisement. Oh shit. Hayden stared at the yellow ape below, thinking. Then, Huang Yuan said to Hayden at this time, Major General Hayden, I think Teacher Zephyr hasn't taught you domineering yet? Speaking of this, he didn't wait for Hayden's answer, and then continued. It should be no, otherwise, you can't even try to attack. After the words, he also showed a trace of regret for Hayden. After Hayden heard Huang Yuan's words, he was speechless, and his mood at the moment became even worse. What a special thing. If the master is domineering, the master will do it for you right away. I will let you play these bells and whistles here? Hayden's psychological activities are very rich. On the surface, he keeps staring at Huang Yuan, observing his posture, and paying attention to the timing of the next attack. Not talking anymore? Huang Yuan couldn't help tilting his head to look at Hayden in midair. The breath of this kid now seems to be a little different, and a little doubt arose in his heart. The spiritual pressure on Hayden's body, now because of his own emotional excitement, turned into a restless, uncontrollable riot at this moment. At this moment, Hayden really wanted to free up the two Zhanpo knives directly, one half sweeping solution, the other beginning solution, and with the strongest posture to directly kill the yellow ape in front of him. However, there is no armed color domineering against the natural element, and it is still an element that can't find weaknesses like the flash element. Even if he is the strongest posture, he is just useless now, which only increases consumption. Maybe Huang Yuan didn't keep his hands after watching his eruption, and he might be stunned in an instant. Damn.